Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Natalie Fanny Gonzalez. Welcome to the County Council session. We're going to start with our afternoon proclamations with a proclamation recognizing World Art Day by the County Council Education and Culture Committee. If anybody who came to that proclamation, please come forward.
This is a different one. Yes, if you're here for World Art Day, come on down. Bring your art with you. Hey, how are you? Good to see you. Hello, everybody. Yeah, if you have something to post, maybe you got a board. Come on this side so we can get your board in. Here, yeah, right there. Yeah. I'm joined here by Council Member Ahmed, who's our council member for a day, our student council member. And I'm going to give the mic briefly to everyone here to introduce themselves, but we're really, really happy to be celebrating today, which is the day before World Art Day, right? We're going to do something and gather, and I thought this was the perfect year to do this. Formally celebrate all the artists, the creators, the dreamers, the institutions that literally make Montgomery County one of the most culturally rich places in the United States of America. World Art Day is observed every April 15th, which happens to coincide with tax days because we needed a little joy on tax day. In honor of the birthday, no, actually, it's in honor of the birthday of Leonardo da Vinci. A reminder that art is not a luxury. It's a language. It communicates, it tells stories. It helps people process pain and imagines a world that's better. And Montgomery County has a really good story worth telling. We're home to dozens of world-class organizations, several of which are represented today, from Strathmore to Roundhouse Theater, from Arts and Humanities Council to the Washington Revels to Arts on the Block, institutions that serve every corner of this county, that reflect our incredible diversity and that invest in the next generation of artists every single day. So on behalf of the Education and Culture Committee, they should be up here too if they're not. Okay, they are, Councilmember Mink and Councilmember Evans. I am proud that this is the first time the council has celebrated World Art Day. So we're going to hopefully create a new tradition here. It's a milestone, and I want to thank all the folks who helped make this happen. The arts enrich our schools. They drive our local economy. They bring neighbors together across different lines that might not otherwise be in a room together. And it's not just good policy to support the arts, it's good community policy. So today we'll read a proclamation, but what it really says is that we see everyone in our community, we value you, and we're committed to making sure that the arts remain accessible to each and every one of our residents. I want to invite Councilmember Mink and Evans if they'd like to make any comments.
Sure. Happy World Art Day. Good to see everyone. Art reminds me of our ability to let creativity connect us, to inspire us, and just really reflect our communities. When I think about art, I don't think that it's just limited or that it should be limited to galleries. I see it in our neighborhoods, in our schools, and in our shared spaces. It tells our stories, it preserves our culture, and it reflects the richness of our community. And so I am happy, as Councilmember Jawando just stated, that the council is reaffirming our commitment to the arts and to make certain that there's nobody, no matter the age of our residents, that shouldn't have that access and ability to take part in it, to be able to thrive as well. So good to see everyone and happy to celebrate World Art Day, a day early, that is.
Good afternoon, everybody. Kristen Mink, District 5. I'm very pleased to be here to celebrate World Arts Day, and I think it's great that this is the first year that we're doing it because we're under a lot of stress and strain as a community, as a county, as a country. Right now, we're under attack in a lot of ways, and often when that happens, we can just focus on survival, right? Thinking about Maslow, how do we make sure that everyone is fed and clothed and housed? That's our responsibility. We have to do that. But what we have seen, since the beginning of time is that maintaining our humanity and expressing ourselves through the arts and the ability of everyone to be able to participate in that and to be able to write that story, even while there are efforts to oppress, that is so critically important. And it's times like these when we really have to work and fight to make sure that we're able to do that. So very glad to have everyone so many folks who are in our community working to make sure that that happens, even during and especially during these most trying times, and to be able to recognize and uplift their work and the arts as a priority here in Montgomery County.
So I'm just going to ask everyone just to briefly introduce yourself and your organization. And
I am Jenny Stepanek, the president of the Maddie Stepanek Foundation. We partner with VisArts and Visibility Lab. We also have a Peace Through Arts and Poetry program that we just launched this year. And for many of you, you might know that we build a community mosaic at Peace Day every year, July 11th, save the date. So thank you, New Mosaic.
Jessica Novakovic. I'm Jessica Novakovic, a teacher at the Akhmetova Ballet Academy.
My name is Jacqueline Akhmetova. I'm the artistic director and founder of the Akhmetova Ballet Academy.
Hi, I'm Niloufar Chaudhry. I'm with Washington Revels. We are a performing arts organization based in Glen Echo Park, and we serve the greater Washington, D.C. area. We celebrate cultural traditions through music, dance, and storytelling.
Good afternoon. I'm Allison Rasher. I'm the Director of Development at Glen Echo Park Partnership for the Arts and Culture.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is John Murph. I'm on the board of the Arts and Humanities Council of Montgomery County. I'm the secretary.
Hi, I'm Chris Barkley, Executive Director of Arts on the Block. We're a youth workforce development organization. It teaches young people how to create public art.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Leslie Morris. I'm the Director of Mansion Galleries at Strathmore.
I'm Michael Barrett Jones. I'm the Director of Development of Roundhouse Theater, which 50 years ago grew out of a county program. And next year we'll be celebrating 50 free acts of theater to create barrier-free access to people across the county.
Hello, my name is Lizzie Morales. I'm the Arts and Education Program Director with the Maryland State Arts Council.
And then we're going to hear briefly from Susan Jenkins, the Executive Director of the Arts and Humanities Council. Then we'll read the proclamation.
Thank you, Councilmember Juando, and good afternoon. Thank you to all of the council members today. Happy World Arts Day. On World Arts Day, there's much to celebrate, and I invite you to savor the beautiful sounds of Montgomery County, a living canvas colored by the brilliance of more than 500 cultural organizations and over 2,000 artists and scholars who transform our everyday spaces into sanctuaries of expression. From the melodious sounds emanating from our world-class hall at Strathmore to the richness of Sutrahara's dance and the county's vast works on paper collection, in a county where 1/3 of us were born in lands across the sea, our multicultural fabric is our greatest strength. Through thousands of shared stories countywide, we know that belonging is not a luxury, it's a fundamental human need. In Montgomery County, our very fabric is woven together through cultural affirmation and sharing, where we preserve the sacred traditions of our ancestors and celebrate the vibrant heritage of our neighbors through arts and culture. This collective act of imagination is also a mighty economic engine. Our local cultural industry is a $251 million work of art, supporting 5,619 jobs and providing 2.9 million cultural experiences that inspire, heal, and connect us, thanks to the county's sustained investments. Today, we celebrate the resilient imagination of our creative sector here and worldwide. And although times in our sector are challenging at this very moment, please remember what author Toni Morrison said, and that is, this is precisely the time when artists go to work. There's no time for despair, No place for self-pity, no need for silence, and no room for fear. We speak, we write, we do language. That's how civilizations heal. She goes on to say that, I know that this world is bruised and bleeding, and though it's important not to ignore its pain, it's also critical to refuse to succumb to its malevolence. Like failure, chaos contains information that can lead to knowledge, even wisdom, like art. So let's continue to weave art into the very rhythm of our daily lives, in our workplaces, in our parks, in our schools, confirming through every note and in every brushstroke that in Montgomery County, everyone truly belongs. Thank you, and have a very happy World Art Day. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. If I could be joined by my colleagues on the committee and our council member for a day, we're going to read this proclamation. We'll take a picture. Whereas World Art Day, observed annually on April 15th in recognition of the birth of Leonardo da Vinci, was established by the International Association of Art to celebrate the universal language of art and its essential role in fostering creativity, cultural exchange, and human connection. And
whereas Montgomery County, Maryland proudly marks its inaugural celebration of World Art Day, recognizing the creativity and cultural vibrancy that make this community a uniquely dynamic and inspiring place to live, work, and create. And
whereas the arts play a vital role in strengthening society by enriching education, supporting economic development, and promoting dialogue, understanding, and unity among diverse communities. And
let's move this down a little bit. Whereas Montgomery County is home to a diverse, thriving arts ecosystem supported by organizations such as the Montgomery County Arts and Humanities Council, as well as renowned cultural venues including the Strathmore Music Center and the AFI Silver Theater and Cultural Center, and many more which collectively contribute to the county's rich artistic landscape and community engagement. And
whereas on this day, residents and leaders of Montgomery County come together to celebrate creativity, unity, and the transformative power of the arts to shape our world and honor artists and cultural institutions and reaffirm a shared commitment to ensuring that the arts remain accessible and valued for generations to come. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Education and Culture Committee and the entire Council of Montgomery County, Maryland, hereby celebrate World Art Day, presented this day, 14th of April, in the year 2026, signed by myself, Councilmember Evans, Councilmember Mink, on behalf of the entire council. Happy World Art Day.
That was wonderful. Thank you for organizing the World Art Day proclamation, celebrating the arts. Good to see you, everyone. Next, we're going to have a proclamation recognizing Immigrant Day of Resilience by Councilmember Mink. Everybody who came to that proclamation, please come forward.
Okay. Grace, you got to be up here. Come join us for Immigrant Day of Resilience, please. I'm so glad you're here. Okay. Rita, by all means, if anybody who would like to join us from the board and MCPS, by all means, to celebrate Immigrant Day of Resilience. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. All right. So thank you to everyone who is here with us today to celebrate Immigrant Day of Resilience. This is our second annual day celebrating, and this was first brought to our attention this day that we get to recognize by Students Fair, who you will be hearing from today. So thanks to them, we have a new tradition as well, a World Art Day as well as Immigrant Day of Resilience. Another new tradition that's a really important one at a time like this. And over this last year, as we have seen increasing attacks on our diverse community, on our community members, on our values, I have been so moved, so blown away by the response of our immigrant community, which has been to organize, to support each other, to support our county and community, and to really take meaningful action. So if anyone in the federal government thought that the attacks were going to make folks hide away, they are sorely mistaken, and that has really been embodied here in Montgomery County in so many different ways by our nonprofit organizations, by advocacy organizations, by existing community groups, by our faith community, by new community groups that have come together and continued to form new means of support and response to ICE's actions in our community. It's really been incredible. So the way that we have embodied resilience here very much deserves to be remarked upon. So I want to give a big thank you to everyone in our community who has been part of those activities, from existing longtime advocates to brand new volunteers, folks delivering groceries, folks who are responding to reports of ICE, folks who are fundraising to support impacted families, those who are advocating for stronger policies at both the county and the state level. Incredible sine die last night, by the way, in Annapolis. And you'll be hearing from Casa about some of those wins momentarily, as well as from our many in our business community. And you will hear from a representative there as well today. So we want to give most of the floor time here to some of those folks so you can hear from them. So I'm going to start off with Students Fair, given that they are the reason that we have this day. So we have two speakers from Students Fair, Brian Diaz, who is a senior at Springbrook, and Holly Riley, who is a 10th grader at Damascus. And I want to also recognize Emily, who's here with Students Fair, who was also a 7th grader and a runner-up for council member of the day, which is really incredible. Okay, so Brian and Holly, come on up.
Good afternoon. My name is Chloe Riley. I'm a sophomore at Damascus High School and president of the Damascus Students Fair chapter. I stand in front of you today not only as a student, but as a member of the community who has seen firsthand the impact of the recent administration's efforts to diminish and degrade immigrants. And as heartbreaking as this has been to witness, the community and the resilience that has risen from this has instilled a sense of hope in my community and me that means more than my peers and I will ever be able to say or show. The target that has been put on the backs of not only immigrants, but their children is disgraceful and a result of blatant racism. Every day, students in our schools carry the weight of their stories, jobs, the weight of mortgages, immigration attorney bills, and so much more that we may never hear about. They carry stories of being the odd one out, navigating new languages, new schools, new expectations, new cultures, the list goes on. These challenges are real, but Students Fair has provided a sense of community and a safety net for those who need it. I have witnessed countless numbers of my peers reach out for help, as I have done so as well. No matter what, I have always felt as though I had a choice. The choice to not have to carry the burden of the unfair treatment of immigrants alone. Resilience in our community looks like showing up for each other, even when it has felt uncertain or scary or simply unfair that we have to do this. Whether it has been through GoFundMes, bake sales, lobby days, or even simply weekly chapter meetings, Students Fair has always been a safe space in a community where everyone is welcome. When students come together with purpose and intention, we not only overcome challenges, we create change. We create real change, and we intend on continuing to do so. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Brian Diaz Vasquez. I'm a senior at Springbrook High School. I'm here to represent Students Fair. It's an honor to speak here in front of everybody. When I hear resistance, I don't think about something big or dramatic. I think about everyday life. I think about students who wake up early, go to school all day, and go home with responsibility that don't stop whenever it is that go to support their families, translate, or take care of their young siblings. I think about students who deal with that stress, pressure, and sometimes fear, but we show up every day try their best. That's what resistance looks like to me. And honestly, that's a lot of us don't realize how strong we are. We're here doing what we have to do. As Students Fair, we build a community where no one's going through that alone. We each support each other whenever sometimes we don't understand school, or giving advice, or just being there to listen. Sometimes supporting is something bigger, like helping families, or finding resources for them. Sometimes it's simple. It makes them feel seen, heard, and feel belong in the community. And that matters to people. As students, we face challenges that don't go away. I've seen listening challenges stop us, or whenever it turns into motivation, we step up, we speak out, we take care of each other. That what makes our community strong. Thank you supporting. Your support helps us create opportunity and support students seen and empowers and keep us going to successfully. No matter what we face, we go through it together, not alone, but together. Thank you.
Give it up for our students. Okay. And I want to note also that we have representation from our Board of Education here. Board of Ed President Grace Rivera Oven is here, as is Rita Montoya. And for those at home, our Superintendent Thomas Taylor is here in the audience. Our schools are dedicated to making sure they support and protect the full breadth of our community and our immigrant community in these trying times. So thank you all very much for being here as well. Okay, now I'm going to bring up Sylvia Hueza, who is representing today the Montgomery County Immigrant Rights Collective, MoCo IRC. She is a member of MoCo IRC, and she is also a business owner of multiple businesses, and who is leveraging all of those spaces to do incredible work in partnership with the community. So come on up here, Sylvia.
Okay, I'm a shorty, so hopefully this doesn't, you'll have to help me put it back. Oh, thank you. All right.
Make sure you name your business.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Sylvia Hueso, and I am the second generation of El Comalito, and I'm also the owner and thank you. And I'm also the owner and program director of Creative Youth, which is a children's sewing school in Bethesda. So actually, this was great to also be here for World Art Day. So how exciting. Thank you so much, council members. I just want to extend my gratitude first to Councilwoman Kristen Mink for leading this recognition and for her unwavering support of the migrant community and the rest of our county council for working together to enact protections for our most vulnerable immigrant neighbors. I especially want to extend my deepest gratitude to the Montgomery County Immigrant Rights Collective, of which I am honored and proud to work alongside. I am here today on behalf of my fellow immigrants and on behalf of the hundreds of volunteers that form the MoCo IRC. My relationship with this organization began a year ago when the heaviness and sadness I felt for my undocumented brothers and sisters felt like a crushing weight ready to collapse on me at any moment. It was through divine providence that I was led to them. This collective stepped into our neighborhoods to empower and unite us through Know Your Rights training, door-to-door canvassing, and mutual aid for impacted families. It is through them that I found the courage to wield my privilege and my resources and to stand firmly where I've been planted. I am part of the 1.5 generation that migrated with their parents as children and blossomed into adulthood under the embrace of this country. Like so many immigrants, my parents worked arduously to build a better future for their children. As the eldest daughter, I became the de facto translator, secretary, and eventual business partner to what is now a 22-year legacy business in Montgomery County. I am also here to celebrate them and to honor the team of men and women who helped build that legacy, our staff. In partnership with this organization, we have hosted markets, crafting events, book signings, and fundraised thousands of dollars for impacted families. Through this network, other local entrepreneurs have now been inspired to host fundraisers of their own. Using their resources, they organized everything from Latin dance nights to taco nights. A few months ago, during one of our markets, I looked around our little pupuseria. The vibrancy of our county's diversity and the embrace of a multicultural village permeated the room. As a group sat and sewed broken hearts, another sat pulling at their cheesy pupusas, while the rest joyfully coexisted in solidarity. I felt a great sense of relief knowing that this is what makes our country great. Each member of this collective offers their gift of service to show up for complete strangers, whether it's delivering groceries, washing clothes, stamping t-shirts, or leading a craft night. Every single person who is part of this group holds a special light in all this darkness. I am humbled by their relentlessness and forever grateful for their solidarity. We take care of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much in so many ways, Sylvia. Now I'm very excited to bring up Viviana Lozano from CASA, a longtime fighter and organizing space in our community, providing direct services to impacted community members, as well as advocating and working for legislative change.
Okay, good. No, I think that's good. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Viviana Lozano, and I am Organizing Deputy Director, and we are CASA. And I am a proud immigrant from Colombia. Several weeks ago, Montgomery County leaders and residents, including CASA members, sent a powerful and unmistakable message by passing the Community Trust Act, acknowledging that this country will not stand for the targeting, the detention, or terrorizing the immigrants' communities. Today we say thank you. In our community, we say this. Into our community, we say this. We know this is a difficult time, but we stand together, we stand strong, and we move forward knowing our leaders are taking action to protect us. At the same time, we recognize that there's still more to be done. And together, we will keep pushing, keep organizing, and keep fighting to ensure this country is safe for all. I am also proud to share that last night, we conclude a historic Maryland legislation section. one that delivers real, lasting change. Ending the 287G program. Yes. Straining protection for personal data against ICE. And after 10 years of tireless advocacy, finally passing the Community Trust Act. Let us be clear. Police safety is built on trust, no fear. When government choose to put people first, communities grow stronger, families feel safer, and we all become more resilient. We come far, but we're not done yet. Let's keep going. ¿Sí se puede?
Sí se puede.
Thank you.
Thank you. And closing us out very briefly, I apologize, Luisa, is Luisa Cardona from the Office of the County Executive, who is really leading so much of the work to ensure that our local government is using our abilities and resources to support the work of community members and nonprofits.
Hello. Luisa Cardona on behalf of the Office of the County Executive. It is truly a pleasure to stand here in front of you all today. Thank you so much to the council, to Councilmember Mink. The County Executive has truly an amazing council that backs immigrant rights initiatives. We are so grateful for all of the departments and organizations that we work with every single day through HHS, through the Gilchrist Immigrant Resource Center, through our schools. Many of those organizations are standing here today. I do want to recognize some of those that aren't here with us, including Carecen and Identity and Rainbow House, who really help us support families who have been impacted by deportation. To those families or those who are detained, please know that you are not forgotten, that this county will do and is doing everything it can to support you. I do want to quickly quote our first Latina Supreme Court Justice, who, in a dissent when the court lifted restrictions on immigration stops which discriminated based on the way you looked, said we should not live in a country where government can seize anyone who looks Latino, speaks Spanish, and appears to work a low-wage job. Rather than stand idly by while our constitutional freedoms are lost, I dissent. That dissent itself is an act of resilience. And so is this. Resilience is not the absence of pain. It is the decision to build, to push, and to stand together. The Office of the County Executive is proud to stand together with you all here today. Not just today, but every day. Thank you.
Okay, if all the council members who are reading could join me up here. Whereas Montgomery County recognizes April 15th as Immigrant Day of Resilience and is proud to be home to a diverse immigrant and indigenous population integral to the strength, vibrance, and very identity of our county. And
whereas the federal government is attacking the rights and freedoms of immigrants and those perceived to be immigrants, detaining and deporting valued community members, driving families to face impossible choices, including leaving their home in the United States just to stay together, and creating fear, trauma, and deep economic hardship. And
whereas the county is proud and grateful that immigrants, including undocumented immigrants in Montgomery County, have responded by leading wide-ranging, well-organized, culturally responsive efforts to protect, inform, and support our diverse community. And
whereas the county thanks the organizations, houses of worship, neighborhood groups, and thousands of residents, from longtime activists to newly activated volunteers, who have mobilized to deliver groceries, respond to potential ICE sightings, provide interpretation, including indigenous languages,
get students to and from school safely, fundraise thousands of dollars for impacted families, provide legal assistance, accompany at-risk residents to check-ins and court dates, navigate families to county resources, and much more. And
whereas the county commends the many businesses and nonprofits across the county implementing policies to protect the rights of their employees, customers, and clients in the presence of federal immigration agents, recognizing that doing so is both morally sound and operationally beneficial.
Now, therefore, be it resolved that Councilmember Kristen Mink, Council President Natalie Fanny Gonzalez, and the entire County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland, hereby celebrate Immigrant Day of Resilience and thank all those working to protect our immigrant community for their outstanding contributions to the safety and strength of our diverse county. Signed this 14th day of April in the year 2026.
That was great. Thank you so much to everyone joining us today. We're going to move on to our next item. It's agenda item 4. It's a public hearing on a resolution to approve an amendment to the FY 25-30 Capital Improvements Program and Supplemental Appropriation number 26-62 to the FY 26 Capital Budget, Montgomery County Government, Department of General Services, Poolsville Highway Depot for $500,000, source of funds, GO bonds. A Transportation and Environment Committee work session happened on April 13, 2026. Those wishing to submit material for the Council's consideration should do so by the close of business day. There are no registered speakers for this hearing. This public hearing is now closed. Agenda item 5 is a public hearing on a resolution to approve an amendment to the FY 25-30 Capital Improvements Program and Supplemental Appropriation 26-61 to the FY 26 Capital Budget, Montgomery County Government, Department of General Services, Small Business State Revitalization Program, Tacoma Park Car Wash for $200,000. Source of funds, state aid. A Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee work session is scheduled for April 23, 2026. Those wishing to submit material for the Council's consideration should do so by the close of business on April 16, 2026. There are no registered speakers for this hearing. This public hearing is now closed. Agenda item 6 is a public hearing on a resolution to approve FY 27 911 fee rate. The Public Safety Committee work session is scheduled for April 23, 2026. Those wishing to submit material for the Council's consideration should do so by the close of business on April 16, 2026. There are no registered speakers for this hearing. This public hearing is now closed. Agenda item 7 is a public hearing on a resolution to approve FY 27 transportation fees, charges, and fares. A Transportation and Environment Committee work session is scheduled for April 16, 2026. Those wishing to submit material for the Council's consideration should do so by the close of business today. There are not registered speakers for this hearing. This public hearing is now closed. Agenda item 8 is a public hearing on a resolution to approve FY27 solid waste service charges. A Transportation and Environment Committee work session is scheduled for April 20th, 2026. Those wishing to submit material for the Council's consideration should do so by the close of business today. There are not registered speakers for the hearing. This public hearing is now closed. Agenda item 9 is a public hearing on a resolution to approve FY27 water quality protection charge. A Transportation and Environment Committee work session is scheduled for April 20th, 2026. Those wishing to submit material for the Council's consideration should do so by the close of business today. There are not registered speakers for this hearing. This public hearing is now closed. Agenda item 10. You guys awake? Okay. It's a public hearing on a resolution to approve FY27 property tax credit for income tax offset. A Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee work session is scheduled for April 29, 2026. Those wishing to submit material for the Council's consideration should do so by the close of business on April 22nd, 2026. There are no registered speakers for this hearing. This public hearing is now closed. Now the fun begins. The last item on today's agenda is a continuation of our morning work session on the Capital Improvements Program for, this time, Montgomery County Public Schools. I'm going to turn it to the chair of the Education and Culture Committee, Chair Jawando. Please kick us off.
Thank you so much, Madam President, and I'll invite the superintendent and, with your permission, the board president down. Thank you. We have heard, obviously, from hundreds of residents, and some of those, as you all will remember, are folks coming in to talk about the conditions of our schools. We've all been hearing about this. Kids are learning in facilities with aging HVAC systems, deteriorating roofs, and infrastructure that's been deferred for way too long. And we have to step up. And I want to personally thank the board and the superintendent for doing the first thing in any difficult conversation, telling us the depth of the problem. And we've done that. And the committee took this up preliminarily. And obviously we have a lot of work ahead of us here as we reconcile the budget. But the committee preliminarily recommended, after asking for recommended non-recommended reductions from the school system, that we would approve the Board of Education's requested 2732 CIP with modifications to align to what we can afford. We supported the county executive's technical adjustments, and we assumed the non-recommended reductions. There was a scenario A in the packet, which Mr. Levchenko will discuss, with one change. We recommended delaying Cold Spring Elementary's replacement by 2 years rather than 3, and keeping that community closer to the board's original timeline, recognizing it is the only open concept school in the system. By a 2-to-1 vote, we concurred with the removing of artificial turf costs from the outdoor play space project and funding natural grass replacements instead. That would free up $34.1 million over the 6 year, and we recommended redirecting those dollars to HVAC or other urgent systemic work within our schools. If the full council would concur with that, I think it would make sense to direct MCPS to provide a plan for how those savings should be allocated. We deferred action on relocatable classrooms pending a supplemental appropriation request, and on technology modernization pending coordination with the operating budget, because that has a big impact there. The inflation adjustments will be reconciled with MCPS and OMB ahead of final action mid-May. I do want to note that these recommendations keep Damascus High School and Eastern Middle School on track, and prioritize healthy learning environments and are fiscally responsible. So with that, I would turn it over to Mr. Levchenko. Well, actually, before that, why don't we turn it to the superintendent, if you have, or the board president, for her comments, and then to Mr. Levchenko.
Thank you so very much, Chair Jawando. Good afternoon, buenas tardes, President Natalie Fanny Gonzalez, Vice President Miriam Balcom, and the rest I see ourselves as colleagues, so the rest of the colleagues. Thank you so much for the opportunity today to discuss with you the Board of Education's requested FY 2027 capital budget and the FY 2027-2032 capital improvement program known as the CIP for those at home. First, on behalf of all my Board of Education colleagues, we want to thank all of our community members, the parents, the students for their thoughtful advocacy throughout the summer months and throughout this year's capital improvement program process. As we navigate these challenging but critically funding decisions in our school system, our requested CIP totals $2.78 billion, an increase of $1.3 billion more than the previously approved CIP. Our community, the Board of Education, and this council have requested that MCPS staff and the superintendent justify the CIP needs with data. In response, you see the long overdue level of transparency with which this year's CIP was prioritized and publicly presented. Dr. Taylor and our facilities team developed a new CIP prioritization framework for this year, which helped inform the board on which major capital projects should be requested. MCPS staff coordinated with a third-party consultant that conducted independent facility condition assessments for all our schools built before 2023. These assessments are available online and sortable and have both a summary version and a full report version as well. We are very proud of the work that the team has been able to accomplish in such a short time period. And as of yesterday, there were 134 reports. 134 reports published online. The remaining schools have been assessed, and we are awaiting final reports from our vendor. As you know so well, the full extent of the school system's facility and infrastructure needs exceeds the funding request that is before you for consideration. The Board of Education looks forward to working with you as our funding partners to ensure we continue to make the progress needed for our schools and schools communities. Thank you.
As tempted as I am to just say, yeah. There's a little bit more that I'd like to add. Madam President, Madam Vice President, Mr. Chairman, and members of the council. It's a challenging time for Montgomery County, but it's also a really exciting time in Montgomery County with a lot of opportunity. Throughout the last 20 months, we've been engaged in foundational work to shape the structure of the school system. And in just the past year, we've completed the largest boundary study in living memory, organized our school system clusters into operational regions, initiated a comprehensive review of facilities and boundaries focused on the elementary level, and established a framework for secondary programs to meet student interests. All while in the past year, we've seen a performance increase in our student outcomes. These efforts will definitely increase programmatic access to all of our communities in our school system, create operational efficiencies throughout the county, and importantly, reduce operating costs over time and ultimately lead to positive experiences for our students, our staff, and our community that utilize our schools. This CIP reflects and aligns with all of these structural shifts and reflects the clear and present new reality of a school system in an era of declining enrollment with an extensive facility portfolio in desperate need of attention and repair, with nearly 2/3 of our schools needing some sort of massive renovation. As we begin our discussion this afternoon, I want to highlight some of the key priorities in this CIP that you all have been talking about and that we've shared some conversations over. 2 individual school projects rise to the forefront of our facility condition need. Eastern Middle School ranked as the top priority in our new CIP prioritization framework, with Damascus High School ranking as the top-ranked high school project. Implementation of the recent boundary study assumed the increased capacity at Damascus High School and that project, and we are requesting that that remain on schedule as a consequence. Projects to repair and replace major systems are a top priority in the CIP, whether you've heard about it on the news about mold or HVACs or pipes. All of these issues are urgent. The day-to-day experience for our staff and students in a school is greatly impacted by poorly functioning HVAC systems, roofs, plumbing, electrical, and other major building components. And while non-school projects are not typically, do not typically feel fun or as fun as the work on schools, they are critically important to the school system's ability to function and to provide services as a workplace environment for a large number of employees who provide direct services to students. Our warehouse, bus depot relocation, and central office rehabilitation projects consistently have been deferred for years and in some cases decades. The county and the municipalities have been asking, even demanding, that MCPS vacate the current locations of some of these operational sites for just as long of a period of time. We are exploring innovative approaches in resolving these outstanding issues, but we must emphasize that these infrastructure needs are not going to get better on their own. They need help and they need support from you. Funding will be required to maintain continuous operations for these critical functions even when they're not functioning. We have been very clear throughout this CIP process that our facility infrastructure problems did not happen overnight, and we know that we can't solve them overnight, and we appreciate the support that you've given. It really does mean a lot because you recognize and see the needs that we see every day. We also recognize that they're not going to get solved in the next week, the next month, or even the next year, or even the next 6-year CIP cycle. And that's okay. We recognize that this is a long journey ahead. In fact, I presented 2 versions of the CIP this fall for the board to consider. One was the basis of the Board of Education's request that you're evaluating today. The other illustrates what we called the hard truth of what our facility needs really are and the true extent of the funding that would be needed to start the work to address the really significant issues in a timely way. It was nearly 2.5 times the value of the proposal that you're evaluating today. For the last several decades, the majority of our capital budget has been spent on chasing capacity-driven projects such as building replacements and enlargements of buildings, additions, and new schools for a consistently expanding system. For the first time in nearly 40 years, MCPS, the region, and the country is experiencing year-over-year enrollment decline. With this shift of our circumstances, we must shift our focus too. Our approach and our priorities must also shift. While we know that the hard truth version of the CIP is unattainable at this very moment, it is important context for the very real funding challenges that you as a body and we as a community are facing. This is the real cost of correction, and we stand ready to support you in partnership in the steps that we all need to take forward in the next couple decades ahead. We look forward to the discussion today, and we are ready to answer your questions as you enter this stage in the capital budget deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our partners in MCPS. I'm going to ask council staff to please walk us through the items that we're going to be voting on. There are certain things in the committee recommendation that that I really think we need to be reviewing right now. But if we can please walk us through there and then pause after each one so we can discuss, otherwise it gets really confusing. Anybody who would like to speak, please let me know. Let's just do it per item. So if you want to start with item 1, I'm right now on page 6 of the packet, but under committee recommendations. But that's where I am. It doesn't mean that you need to start there. I'm just telling you, I want to be organized and do it section by section, okay?
Yeah, just one point of context. It was alluded to earlier. The non-recommended reductions that MCPS provided at the request of the committee was intended to bring the request closer to what the executive recommended in January. And it accomplished that. So they did what they were asked to do. The challenge the council has is that that's not the full gap for the CIP. And the committee talked about this, that we have a roughly $450 million gap across the entire CIP because of the differential primarily from the executive's bonds plan for issue and the council's approved spending affordability guidelines for the CIP. So what we're talking about today is arguably balanced to the executive's January 15th CIP. It is not balanced to the overall reconciliation that we will need to do over the next month. So we're not done with the numbers.
Highly noted, right. Yes.
So I just wanted to note that off the top. Regarding the recommendations, the packet does list all of the scenario non-recommended reductions, and it should be noted the board did not say they recommend them. They are not. They still support the request that came over in December. With that in mind, the committee did support the scenario A non-recommended reductions for affordability reasons, recognizing that while it was not recommended explicitly by MCPS, it does reflect their priorities. As you heard, it maintains certain projects on their proposed schedules, such as Eastern and Damascus. It also leaves a lot of funding in for their critical systemic projects, but a lot of other projects were deferred or cut in that scenario package of reductions. That's on page 4 of the packet. There was also a scenario B, which was intended to explicitly address FY29 because of there's a peak in the CIP request in the middle years of the CIP. MCPS also did provide some non-recommended reductions one time in FY29. Those were not recommended by the committee at this time. It's I think not because they didn't see that as an affordability issue, but because they see that more as a reconciliation issue later in the CIP. We don't know how much we're going to need to find in any given year yet. That may be helpful going forward, but we did not the committee did not discuss making that recommendation now, but those could come back as part of reconciliation. But with that, you mentioned the specific issues that the committee talked about, and Chair Giwando brought those up briefly, that were different. It's page 6 of the packet. First, the one difference from scenario A was the delay of 2 years for Cold Spring Elementary School replacement instead of 3 years. It's still within the 6-year period of the CIP. Once again, we don't know what we will necessarily need to do as part of final CIP reconciliation, but that was the first item that differed from the non-recommended reductions.
Thank you. Councilmember Andrew Friedson.
Appreciate it. Particularly on Cold Spring, just wanted to thank the committee for their work on this. Strongly agree with this recommendation. Many of us have toured this school. I grew up actually playing soccer on the field at this school. I toured this school originally as a concerning open concept school, one of the many bad ideas from the 1970s, not just school safety. I wasn't around, but I've heard about it. When I was at the state level doing school construction, and this was a concern at the state level that this is a significant safety issue. So it's a instruction issue, it's a quality of a facility issue, but really it's a school safety issue. So just wanted to strongly support and appreciate the committee, and hopefully we can move this forward in final reconciliation because it's really, really important.
Wholeheartedly agree. It's the only school structured this way, and specifically for public safety issues, but also for the children to learn. I mean, we heard the testimony, and it's hard to be in a place where there's so many distractions. So I also appreciate the committee's recommendation. I see Councilmember Kate Stewart.
I just wanted to say thank you very much to the committee, to the school board superintendent, and everyone at MCPS and just to note on the non-recommended reductions, because there are so many schools in my district that are getting pushed out, and I hope someday I'm going to see Piney Branch completed, because that is something we've been advocating for a long time, but understanding the constraints that we're under. And I agree with Cold Spring that I'm glad that was added back in. But I did want to note before we moved on from this, my recognition as the district council person, the tough decisions that are here, and that as the mayor in the city of Tacoma Park said when she was here testifying before us on the CIP, that especially those of us who represent districts, we advocate for our schools, but we are one community, we are one county, and we need to think about how we're going to be working on this all together. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that and thank everyone for their work on this.
Very well said. So I don't see anybody else. Without objection, I think I can say that we can all agree on this item. Okay. Would you please move on to the next one?
Yeah, the next item the committee had some significant discussion on, and Chair Jawando mentioned the 2-1 vote to accept the county executive's recommendation to reduce the outdoor play space and athletic infrastructure project by reducing funds allocated for artificial turf, but still moving forward with the ball fields as natural grass fields. So that was about a $34 million cut across the 6 years in that project. And the committee did ask for some additional information on that, which is provided attached to the packet. And I'm sure MCPS can speak to that as well. But that was sort of half of the committee recommendation. The other half was and the reason for the first part of it was to reallocate those dollars to urgent systemic work. They noted HVAC, but of course there's other urgent systemic work as well. And if the council is supportive of that, the committee asked staff to work with MCPS so that they could identify how they would prioritize using those resources and request that back to us so that the council could act during the context of this CIP.
All right, thank you for that. There's a lot to unpack here before I turn it to colleagues. Number one, and let me just be upfront. I'm one of the strongest advocates in this county for grass fields. I think I have made my mark on that. That does not mean that Natalie gets to do whatever she wants. Can you please clarify, or I'm going to ask legal staff, I'm looking at you. The council cannot tell MCPS how to use their money. As much as I want to, believe me. Believe me, it's like the biggest frustration of being in this position. But we cannot legally tell them what to do with it. And regarding the county executive statement, he made a statement. He cannot legally dictate to MCPS either. Can legal staff comment on what I said, or maybe council staff, one of you?
Well, on the fiscal piece, because it's a significant reduction to the project, what's left in it does constrain what MCPS can do in that project. So the council has fiscal authority over that project, and it would greatly reduce what they could do in it. Could they still do an artificial turf project? Perhaps, but they would not be able to do the scale of work that was presumed. But I'll let legal staff speak to the directing the actual spending of the dollars.
Right. I mean, thank you, Madam President, and as the council president noted, the county does have to follow the prescriptive provisions of state law, the education article, and in particular section 5105 regarding school funding. There are a number of very detailed requirements regarding both operating and capital budgets for the school. And in general, this isn't, this is widely accepted and not privileged advice. Just to tell you, the Attorney General has explained on multiple occasions, and the courts have explained, that
we, the county, are field preempted with respect to education policy. So when we are doing funding for the schools, we need to really home in on the specific authority that's given to us by the state under the state education article. So that's kind of the context. In terms of capital projects, when we do have some explicit authority under the state code to reduce the requested amounts, but the code is silent about the ability to increase requested amounts. In other words, to say like, I'm going to take money from pot A and put it in pot B, that's not contemplated under the state law. And so I, take that under advisement.
I appreciate that advice or those comments. And also, I do not personally, this is my position, I will not take money away from athletic fields. There's no way. We need our kids to be outside, and especially the athletic fields that we have in the schools, it's not just for the students. The community always use them. So, and I am very sympathetic, and obviously I want all the single schools that we have in the county to have effective HVAC systems. Nobody's saying otherwise. I'm just saying that you don't take from one pot to put on the other when both of them are in need. So I am not in support of the committee recommendation. And that's all I'm going to say for this one. So I'm going to start going down the road. I have Councilmember Dawn Lukey.
Thank you, Madam President. And I always appreciate her candor. I too had concerns about the legal issues of what it, and I say this, and we joke sometimes, for the millions watching at home, right? But it really is important to clarify this for the public, because folks are very passionate about a great many things, and the conditions of the buildings, as well as the playability of the fields and the usability. And I have 4 kids in this system, and I'm going to say this outright because one of them's coming to Sherwood High School next year, and I know that's one of our HVAC problem areas, right? And so it is not that I am unaware or don't appreciate the concerns regarding mold and stuff in these buildings. I totally get it. But the way this sort of came out put it like as an either or you got to do this and you can't do that. And ultimately it's up to the board and the system. And whatever total amount you have, you get to decide what to do with. And, in saying that, my hope is we do as much HVAC work as we can, which we should. But I also understand, and to Dr. Taylor, to your point, saying capacity is key. It is both capacity in the fiscal sense, but also capacity in the logistical sense. And there are constraints on the logistics of how much HVAC can be done at any given time, correct?
Actually, those constraints are starting to lift. One of the most significant constraints of doing HVAC work is the time period in which it takes to do an HVAC project, and that does add to cost as well. One of the things that we haven't effectively utilized in HVAC projects in the past is holding schools. And candidly, we can even use just part of a year relocating a school for a short period of time and complete what it would normally take us 4 summers to complete, because the students can't be in the building while we're doing that level of work. We could get done in a semester's worth of time and save significant costs, but also to improve the living conditions and working conditions that the students are learning in, and the teachers are working in, and the staff are working in a much shorter time horizon than what we were doing before. This also helps with the procurement of vendors who are doing this level of work. When you are narrowed to just a couple of months in the summertime, the capacity of being able to find vendors that would do that work is severely constrained. But utilizing a different approach does free us up for more of that capacity in the future. So I'm optimistic about what that looks like in the future. But it's not been a strategy we've used in the past.
Thank you for that, and I do want to thank Mr. Mahmood, because we've met and we've had these discussions, and I know that the logistics pieces of this have been incredibly challenging. And so I certainly appreciate, again, that the school system's taking a look at all possible angles of how to achieve the results that we need to get to in the shortest amount of time possible, but also recognizing, again, there are still logistical things to be dealt with, and you all are working through that. And so that is good. But again, this is why it needs to be on the school system to make those choices and decisions based on the total amount of funding received overall and how to execute your effective strategies and choices to remedy and rectify these different things across the board in a fair and equitable manner. Is that fair to say?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And with respect to the fields, and it's no surprise to my colleagues, I did write a memo specifically in support of turf fields at Magruder and Watkins Mill High Schools in my district. And knowing, again, how if we did live in an ideal world where we had more land to utilize and more fields to put in place so that we didn't overuse any one, but also knowing, and I have 3 of my kids are year-round athletes, and knowing how much use those fields could get or need to get, or also the adverse conditions that result from the overuse presently, that no amount of lawn maintenance can cure. There is just no way around it. And I joke because our one of our council staff here, his daughter's on the team with my girls, and Mr. Prouty and I sit side by side a lot, looking at the conditions of grass fields across the county. And so my goal is to uplift how that works in terms of equity and accessibility, year-round use, and allowing not just our athletic teams, but our students in PE classes, as well as community use, which we are not able to accommodate presently. And we have huge needs for recreation for our kids. So just wanting to uplift that and say it is the school system's choice. And that I firmly understand that and support that, and know that you are doing your best to juggle many different things all at once, and look forward to hearing back from you as time progresses as to how that evolves. Thank you.
I want to clarify one thing. The county executive recommendation was to reduce the outdoor play and athletic infrastructure project by $34 million. And then shifting that money to the HVAC systems, okay?
That was not the executive's recommendation to shift it.
That was your idea.
His was just a cut.
Okay, so the executive cut the school board recommendation. The committee shifted to the HVAC. But for that, due to the state law, as our attorney expressed, the Board of Education has to agree. Otherwise, you just can't do it. So the question is, do we put back the $34 million that the school board requested, or we don't? So I just want to make sure that that's clear with everybody. That's the question in front of us. So the committee, and you can maybe frame it better, the committee said that they want to shift it to the HVAC. The executive said reduce the $34 million. So that's the question. We cannot shift it if they don't agree. So I hope that's clear here. And that's one. And so the question really, the legal question here is, do we put it back into the reconciliation list, right? Because that will be, and that's a huge chunk of money. I'm just going to say that. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, I think if the whatever the council does today, the CIP will be revisited as part of the reconciliation at the end. So this project could come back, even if the council were to preliminary restore it to what the board requested. It may have to revisit that very decision within the next
And
month.
if we say that we're going to restore it, we can say we can divide it instead of 34. We can divide it in 2 parts or 3 parts.
Right.
But we're still going to see it back in May. We're not making a decision today. So that's clear. Is that clear with everyone? Okay. So now we have. No, I have Councilmember Mink first. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so in recognition that that we, as a council, as a committee, cannot shift funds, as the council president just stated, we didn't vote to do that because we recognize that we can't do it. So we, in the CIP, the council does have the authority, more so than with the operating budget, to make some types of line item decisions, but that type of decision is not one of them. We can't add funding that the board hasn't requested. And please correct me if I'm wrong on the understanding that we're operating off of now. We can't add funding that the board hasn't requested. We could reduce it. We could engage in a conversation with our board partners about how to spend capital dollars in a way that we, can't to the same degree with the operating budget. So there is more flexibility on the CIP side for the council than there is with the operating budget. But working in partnership with the board, with MCPS, is still a necessary part if we want to do what we talked about in committee, which is to execute a shift. And I think that the council president teed that up well, because the question is, ultimately, the county executive reduced the CIP by this amount in this category. It's going to go, potentially, that amount could go back onto the reconciliation list and compete with other items. So, right, depending on a lot of things. Now, if the board made I will say that if that line item appeared on the reconciliation list as one that was going to addressing the really seriously impaired HVAC and emergency maintenance situation in MCPS, that would be more compelling as it competes to me with other rec list items. Funding remains in the category from which the county executive reduced it for. It's just the reality for MCPS to spend on artificial turf if they want to, or whatever else in that category. That is going to be up to MCPS to decide with a line item detail within that category, is my understanding. So assuming that they're going to maintain the same amount that they have planned for, I think it's playgrounds and outdoor, then that would leave $37.7 million over the 6 years still for whether it be artificial turf or whatever else in that category, however they ultimately decide to spend it if they had that amount, regardless of the county executive's desire or intent upon making that reduction. If that $34.1 million appeared on the reconciliation list, in order for that to hold meeting or whatever, in order to place it onto the reconciliation list as a valid line item that we could move into the budget, we would need to have, my understanding is we would need to have a request from MCPS, from the Board of Ed, explaining if it was going to be in a different category, explaining that, making that request or explaining how they would use it. So my understanding is that we were approaching this council session to see if there is interest from the council in requesting information from MCPS in the board, if they should be willing to, if they are willing to do that, about if it was going to go, if we were going to let it compete on the reconciliation list to address HVAC and emergency maintenance issues, what that would look like, because that is spread across a couple different categories. There's an HVAC broadly, there's an HVAC category, there's an emergency maintenance category, there's nuanced decisions to be balanced and weighed within there. So if you had $34.1 million to look at across those categories, then how would you do that? We would need to get that from the Board of Ed in order for us to actually move to have that added to the reconciliation list. And so if there is interest from the council today, then we could ask the Board of Ed if they would be willing to make that request. And if there is not interest from the council today, then there's no point in them considering putting that together. So that's my understanding of the state of play. I'm hoping that makes sense to colleagues, council staff. Does that sound accurate?
Just a couple clarifications. We do have a reconciliation process.
Reckless is the wrong word, but there are scenarios.
Because we have a 6-year CIP and have to balance each year by expenditures and funding, we can't have a list that is easy to walk off and get to a number. So it becomes more of a package.
Yes, the scenarios, yes.
But with that said, As you mentioned, the few times this has happened before over many years where the council has wanted to do something that the board had not requested, what you just mentioned is what's happened, which is the council will ask the board to consider something and then come back with a recommendation so that it is the board requesting it ultimately before the council acts. So that has happened occasionally in the past. It's not very often, but that's been the process to avoid the very legal concern that was brought up earlier.
Yep, perfect. I have quite a few people, and as far as I know, there's no request from the school board to switch to HVAC for this particular amount of money, right? Okay.
Correct.
Yes. Councilmember Shebra Evans.
Sure. Thank you, President Fanny Gonzalez. I was going to say I don't expect for the board or the superintendent to respond to that right now. Please don't.
Correct. No.
Actually.
And honestly, I cannot do that. I need to speak to my colleagues. So I cannot unilaterally make a decision and just correct.
Okay. So I wanted to go on record. I know it's in our documents. I don't know who all is reading online, but I was the dissenting vote. I am and have been a strong supporter of turf, but never have I wanted to, in this role, usurp the board's authority, right? So I want you to make the decisions, right? We are the funders. And I actually was a little disappointed that the county executive removed the money for the artificial turf. I think it's more than just about turf, at least for me. I am a mom of, as Councilmember Lukey said, of 2 student athletes, collegiate at the college level, right? And so I do look at this as the ability for our athletes to perform at their highest levels on materials that's conducive for their sport. But in addition, just with our students being able to participate just in outdoor activities during the day, and this just prohibits it. We heard from MSI, so maybe there's a way to do private-public partnerships, but what I do know is that when it rains, the fields are not conducive for practice. And then when you think about the outside use, you want to save and preserve the field. So I have just been a huge proponent of turf. I've been very public on the record as a board member, on the record during our Education and Culture Committee, but I was really opposed to the vote, not only because it wasn't supportive of turf, but just because I wanted you all to make the decision. And I did. I was on record and saying I was uncomfortable with making you have to come forward to ask what could essentially be viewed as an increase in your budget, right? So I respect the thoughts of all my colleagues on the council. And I do know that we're in a tough situation, but I wish, as it was stated earlier, that I had some kind of crystal ball to win the Powerball, the lottery, to be able to ensure that you all could get what you needed in particular. Because I just think about, we talk about the emotional state of our students, and I believe all this has impacts all the way around. And so this reduction just means that there's somebody that will not have access. You all know I'm very huge and big in equity, and some students will not have the ability to do what we would like for them to be able to do, not only during the day at school, but even after. We talk very much about after school curricular. So I just wanted to go on record to say that I support turf, and I'm probably going to make Sierra Club mad, but I actually got their endorsement knowing that I supported turf, because we had a really good conversation about equity and access, and all of our students don't understand what the anti-turf advocates are putting out there. And I do know the school system has been really instrumental, and I have raised my hand to support turf that was not that was organic and would not impact students in a negative way. So I just wanted to share that and be on record. And just thank you all for being here today.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to go back and clarify what's happening here today. Number one, the vote today is not about who likes natural grass and who likes turf. That's not what we're voting on, because that decision belongs to the school board. It doesn't belong to us. The question today is, and what the committee did, shifting 34 million, or adding really 34 million to HVAC is also not valid because it was not requested by the school board. The question today is, and I'm gonna ask central staff to use plain language, okay, because otherwise it gets confusing every time somebody speaks. It gets more confusing. Are we adding $34 million back to the 6 years or not? Because the county executive in his proposal to us, he reduced that amount. So are we adding $34 million? That's the question. I understand that some people want to say that we want to relocate the money to HVAC and others not, but that's the question is if we want to add 34. Okay? So with that, did I say anything that was inaccurate before we continue?
No, I think that's the threshold question.
Yes. Thank you. Very clear. Okay. Councilmember Wojo-Wando.
Thank you. I withheld any commentary when I made the report because I wanted us to get through all the other stuff. There's a lot in here in this CIP recommendation. I appreciate Councilmember Stewart running through that. There's a list of a whole bunch of things that we did to move schools to reconcile. I don't want it to get lost in this $34 million, that there was a lot done to reconcile and shift things off in addition to moving Cold Spring up, but a lot of tough decisions that had to be made by the board that we concurred with reluctantly. And I appreciate Mr. Levchenko raising the point that even with that, we're still 450, what's the exact number?
400 and change is a moving target.
400 and change short of what the county executive recommended, which does not include this $34 million. Right. So just so everyone's clear, you are right, in Council President, that is the core question. It came to us without that $34 million. And so the question was, do we want to add that back? And I remember from my first year, Mr. Levchenko's been telling me this for 8 years now, that the reconciliation list in the context of the CIP is it's more of a recommendation. Can you fit it into the puzzle over the 6-year period? And some things fit and some things don't. And so the discussion that happened at the committee was, well, it's already not in there, but we have severe HVAC needs. Could we suggest to MCPS that they consider using this elsewhere if it was restored? That was the discussion. And as Ms. Wellen said, it is a unclear, murky question of whether we could direct them to do so. There has not been attempts to do that. The law doesn't speak to that, as she mentioned. I do think it's appropriate in our appropriate use authority to not direct them to do so, but to make suggestions. And that's happened with my time on the E&C committee, where you all request something after conversations and we support it. But ultimately, it is your decision as the school board to decide how to spend the money. The question is whether you'll have, how much is in this item now without the 34 million, Mr. Levchenko? 37.7, is that right? So there's an amount, I'll let you find it. The 72.9 was the total. But is that with the 34?
No, 72.9 is the board proposal, which includes
minus 34.
So the executive recommendation is 34 million less from the 72.9.
Which is where I'm getting that 30, my math is whatever that is, 37, right? So that is right. So 36, 37. So there's the money is, as we sit here today, that 36 and change is there. The school board will use it as it sees fit. And then if what we said is if we did add it back, maybe you consider using it elsewhere. I will speak just briefly to the field usage issue. It's a slam dunk if turf is going to get more usage than grass, 100%, and we have a usage problem. The issue for me, where I've struggled over the years with this, is on the health and safety side of it. And so when it was already came to us with not enough money and we have significant need on HVAC, That's why I ended up concurring with Councilmember Mink to make that suggestion. But I understand colleagues and really empathize with the board's situation and the school situation, and colleagues and Councilmember Evans and other colleagues who say we've got to get more fields, because we do. Kids need it. The community needs it. And on the Fed committee, we've worked a lot on that over the years in trying to get more fields on the rec side. So that's all I'd say. And I think there's still money to move forward with whatever the system wants to do. But I just want to remind colleagues that if we are trying to add another $34 million to an already $450 million gap, it's just, I don't want to raise public expectations that that's a realistic thing when we have all these significant needs. So I just wanted to provide that context. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much for that. Councilmember Kate Stewart.
Thank you. My first question was to bring us back to the gap, and I appreciate Councilmember Jawando for doing that, just to kind of figure out where we are. And it was one of the reasons why I did want to start my remarks earlier about the non-recommended cuts, because there has been a lot of back and forth and already looking at this budget. To Superintendent, sorry to make you repeat yourself, but like Councilmember Lukey, as you well know, I have schools, and all of us do, that are very much impacted by the mold situation, and we've talked a lot about New Hampshire Estates and others. And so just, I heard what you said about moving forward and approaching and building out capacity. But right now, and a question that I'm getting from my constituents is, as you look at the budget that's before us, which is the county executive's recommended budget, and the money that is in there for HVAC, is that, I want to think about how I want to word that, is that the money that that the school system can work with moving forward to address the needs? Or is there the capacity to increase that from what you know now? Does that make sense?
It is
that
a
fair
good
question?
start within the council's affordability guidelines, meaning we have $750 million worth of HVAC needs. Now, if council wanted to give $750 million towards HVAC all in 1 year, would that make sense? No, because in 20 years, you would also have a bill for the inflated value of $750 million in repairs 20 years from now. So we do have to still prioritize. We still have to queue projects. We still have to measure how much capacity we have. Even utilizing holding schools, there are some limitations based on like what we actually have in the portfolio for that strategy. So this is a very good start. Understanding that we have to do a lot of things simultaneously. I think one of the things that kind of got us into this issue, other than kind of chronic underfunding and not matching inflation and construction cost increases over years, and it's an easy thing to punt on, and you know that this is definitely worth revisiting, is that when we see an issue, we overinvest in one area and we forget these other areas, and that what we will likely end up doing is be playing whack-a-mole with other elements of the capital improvement program. If we overinvest in one area or another, what we really need to do is put in enough water to raise all ships and have the tide raise for everything. Because we have roof replacements, which can also contribute to mold and other more significant issues. Issues like plumbing, again, can also contribute to mold and some of those health and safety issues. So it is not any one aspect that we can really afford. And we're kind of at that point right now where we can't afford to ignore the issues any longer, that we really have to invest in lots of different spaces simultaneously. And this is a good starting point, but we really do need to ramp up over the next couple of decades to get to that capacity equilibrium point. But it is a good start.
Okay. Thank you. And I'm just going to take this opportunity while I have it to say that, and I thank Ms. McGuire for her partnership in talking about when we're thinking about our schools and the repairs and the infrastructure that's happening, and having ongoing communication with our offices and with the PTA, because as Superintendent Taylor, you said, we got into this, we didn't get into this overnight. It's going to take us a while. We have PTAs, especially at the elementary school level, that, folks circle in and there's sometimes information that's not always passed down. And for our offices, it's sometimes we think something happened and then, oh, gee, the cork boards didn't get replaced and it's months later. And so I know you're working on that, but I think instituting some ongoing communications with the PTAs, with our offices, especially at those schools where we're having ongoing infrastructure issues, will be really helpful to keep everyone informed as things are moving forward. And I know we have these difficult, decisions ahead of us, and I do want to say that when it comes to the athletic fields, we do have to do, as Dr. Taylor, you just said, like all these things at once and invest. As someone who is a runner for my own mental health, I know the impact of not being able to get outside, not being able to exercise. As someone who coached rec soccer and knowing the condition of all our fields, and knowing the investment we have to make, and the importance of when we have this conversation of when we should be doing turf, when we should be doing grass. For me, it's not an all or nothing situation, and it shouldn't be for MCPS, it shouldn't be for our parks, and it shouldn't be for rec. We should be having this conversation about where it is appropriate to have our turf fields, where it is appropriate to have our grass fields. And that fundamentally, this really is a question of equity and how we are working and making sure our young people and adults have access to our fields. So these are not easy decisions. And I do agree with my colleagues who say, like, our job is to fund the budget to work with all of you. And then as you're looking at the different schools and thinking about, okay, what fits this community, that you're making those decisions. Thank you.
Exactly. Councilmember Andrew Fritzen.
Thank you, Madam President. I got to say, this is a confusing conversation for a number of reasons, and I appreciate the clarifications that have been made. I think two disservices here have happened. Number one, the county executive, in his budget proposal, cut athletic fields, period, full stop, that's the answer, and then gave a justification for what the cut was for from his opinion, which is non-binding. So all that happened was that he cut athletic fields, gave less money for athletic fields, and then gave an explanation for why he thinks athletic fields should be cut, because he has a philosophical disagreement with the school system on how they use those funds, and made a suggestion of how he would like those decisions to be made moving forward that they can listen to or not listen to. That made the perception among the public that the county executive had the authority to prevent the school system from doing something that he disagrees with, that they also disagree with, which is not true. It's not accurate. We've clarified that here. I think that's an important point. That was the initial disservice. I think there's also a disservice here, the suggestion on the HVAC shift. This is a suggestion that there is money that is available and that is sitting out there, that the county executive parked money in some treasure chest waiting to be deployed, and we're making a friendly suggestion to the school board to ask us to put it into something that we think would be mutually beneficial, HVAC. That's not accurate. So the question really before us is, are we going to put this back in the mix as the Board of Education had requested? Do we not believe that off the bat ball fields should be cut? And then ultimately we're going to have to make some very difficult choices in which we're going to have to reconcile all this and which reductions are going to be made. So I don't think it's even fair to ask the Board of Education to come up with additional non-recommended cuts without additional resources. We're not asking them to deploy additional resources. That is different, I will note, from several years ago when I was council president and Ms. McGuire was on the council staff at the time, and we talked about how we could potentially use tens of millions of dollars that we had in one-time resources. And we did ask the school system, could we use these dollars for HVAC and other systemic uses, understanding the fact that we thought it was unfair to pick one project to park tens of millions of dollars of one-time potential resources. There was a better way of doing it, more sustainable than putting it into ongoing expenses in the rest of the operating budget. And ultimately at the time, unfortunately, the school system's response was, we only have 3 contractors. We have a limited amount of time that we can deploy these resources. We really couldn't use the dollars even if you deployed them to us. That was an extremely disappointing response. It is not shared, I'm glad to say, by the current leadership that is in place on the operating side, not just the superintendent, but the rest of the staff, which has a very different view of how to handle and how to be more creative with these issues. And I'm appreciating that and noting that it was reinforced today on HVAC related issues, but that's not really what we're talking about here. So I'll just note, I don't think we have, in terms of setting unrealistic expectations to the public, I think we have done that twice as part of this discussion. I think walking that back to the extent that we can is important. I will note, I do think that the field should be in the mix as the Board of Education had requested. It wasn't part of the non-recommended cuts. The only reason why we would be accepting that and automatically taking it out of play would be because the county executive cut it, which, I don't agree with his decision and the way in which he did that. But I think we have to be honest with folks, as we have been everywhere else, that there are competing resources here. There is a limited amount of money. There is a very, very large gap that we're going to have to reconcile. And ultimately, today's decision is a preliminary decision, but it's just a question of, do we agree with the county executive to make a significant reduction, having the amount of money for athletic fields and not having any further conversation of whether or not fields should be part of the conversation. It could turn out in the reconciliation, one year is better and another year isn't, or certain timelines based on certain projects that are moved forward can be advanced. And in that case, I think athletic fields should at least be part of the conversation. And that's why I will support reinforcing it. If there needs to be a motion, I'm happy to make it, or if we could have our colleague here, but I'll yield back to the council president. If you want a motion to be made, I'm happy to make it, but if not, all right. I would move that we restore the funding for the outdoor play space and athletic infrastructure to the Board of Education requested amount of $72.9 million.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Andrew Fritzen. And second by Councilmember Lukie. Let's continue. I know I have some people waiting to speak, so before we vote, I'm gonna finish the folks who are on the queue. Councilmember Evan Glass.
Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate this conversation. We're trying to follow the legal bouncing ball in some respect, but what I appreciate about the council's counsel sharing with us what the state law is because it is complicated. And I think even more acutely, it speaks to the fact that I think this process is broken. I'm just going to put it out there that way. It is systemic. It is not the problem of anybody in this room. It has been festering for years, in which state law allows this process to play out like this, where the superintendent and the school board thoughtfully produce budgets year after year that then have to get funded by the county executive and then by the council, with little ability to make changes that we might like, aside from appropriating those funds. And that applies to operating and capital. Since we're talking about the capital budget right now, the challenge in that reality is that, as has been noted, and I'll put a fine point on it, the county executive introduced an unbalanced CIP that the council is now trying to sort out. The county executive made fiscal assumptions and bonding authority assumptions that have not turned out to be in reality. That's the delta and the hundreds of millions of dollars that we are trying to clean up. No fault of anybody in this room. the challenge goes further because we're talking about tens of millions of dollars for athletic fields, which is a real need. Regardless of the material on the ground, the athletic fields need to be there for our kids. But the money that is not there is now competing directly for HVAC and libraries and rec centers and public transportation projects that this council is trying to prioritize. And I want to come back to that word. We are trying to prioritize all of those needs that the 1.1 million residents of Montgomery County have. And there are needs that council members are prioritizing within the school budget that we don't have the authority to do. Therein lies the problem about the process being broken. If council members want to add tens of millions for fields or HVAC or whatever the need is, state law actually prohibits us from adding those funds for that. That's the problem. And so we're stuck in between a rock and a hard place because ultimately we, the council, are the ones who are asked to increase bonding authority, to close that delta, to make right the budget that was unbalanced or increased funding for other projects. When it's the operating budget, we, the council, are tasked with changing the tax structure if necessary or wanted to make those funding changes. And yet again, even there, we don't have the full authority to allocate those revenues, the bonds, the money to where we think it should go. Yet we're the ones who are tasked with raising that revenue and increasing that bonding. The process is broken. I'll end by saying this. Last night was sine die, and so the end of the state legislative session. It is my hope that as they regroup for next year, we can take a look at how the 24 jurisdictions around the state of Maryland, the school systems, operate, and that we could update and modernize our budget processes so that as these challenges only get harder, the relationship and the ability to work even more collaboratively gets easier, because the process right now is not working. I yield back.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Marilyn Balcom.
Thank you. So I think confusion is the word of the day here. It's been a very confusing discussion, and I read the packet, read the memos, read the packet again, and it is confusing. So as others have stated, the CE's budget is already way over our agreed upon spending affordability guidelines, which we all, maybe not all of us agreed on it, but the majority agreed on it. And so if we stick to that SAG, we're already going to have to cut. We know that as we've all gone through our committees with the CIP, we know that we're going to have to cut without this discussion. And so if we add back $34 million, we have to cut even further. Everybody knows that. That's what the budget's all about, right? But I think it's important to share with the public this expectation that if this money goes on the whatever we're calling it, we call it the rec list, right? It's not just, is it ball fields or HVAC? That can't be the dichotomy. It is it transportation? Is it park? We're talking about ball fields. We're not even fully funding our parks or our trails. And so when we think about what this choice is, it's not as simple as ball fields or HVAC. We're talking about everything that the county does for our residents. And we already know that
I'll say for myself, my goal is to not go over SAG, right? That's my goal, which means I'm looking for cuts. And I just think it's irresponsible to add money back. And at the same time that we know we're going to have to cut. And the reason for that is it's the setting up the expectation in the community. And so that's where I'm at.
I appreciate the sincerity. Again, the gap is $437 million. And the motion that was made is to support the school board recommendation on the athletic fields. And that does not mean that is a given. We still need to come back and see every single decision that each committee has made. And in May, we'll see what we end up doing, because math does not lie. So I see, let's keep it short, guys. Councilmember Wojo-Wando.
This is actually not for me. This is for the council member for the day. He doesn't have a button, but I wanted to request for him. Councilmember Ahmed.
Thank you. So I know we've talked a lot about whether this is the legality of this, but I wanted to ask about the turf fields. So when kind of formulating these requests, did the board or the school system ever get any input from student athletes or students in the county? And if so, could you please share just a little bit of what they have told you? Like, are they in support of grass fields? Do they like turf fields? Does it scratch them? Like, what is the feedback from students?
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Ahmed. And it's a good one, because our student athletes are actually very vocal about one particular issue, access. Mm-hmm. And this year is a great example. We lost 2 weeks this year, the last 2 weeks of March, right before spring break. Parks closed access to our grass fields. That was a significant issue for the start of the spring athletic season for us. And here's the important point to take away from this. Whether it's grass or synthetic turf, there's one thing that every single person in this room can agree on, which is that our kids need to get some outside time, they need to get more active, and they need to be more engaged. One of the ways that we can do that is to expand access, and to not just have one or the other, but really to have both. The competition space, by having synthetic turf, does allow us the opportunity to reschedule fewer engagements when there's bad weather in the spring. We have a number of sports, the highest number of sports that are competing outside in the spring. And so that does impact our ability for access.
Okay, sorry.
Can I just add a little bit to that? At least in my district, access and equity for the students for athletic fields is an issue. And we have not been able to really come up with better ways to give them access, because we depend a lot on our rec departments, and when they're closed, there is no access. So when you see a lot of these schools are majority minority students with no access to field plays, it is an issue. And it's not just a Board of Education issue, it should be all of our issues. Okay. And so that's just the reality. And as somebody who chaired the CUF for many years, right? Having turf fields, I'm also like President Natalie Fani Gonzalez. I'm a huge grass supporter.
Council President, I'm sorry, not council, school board president. I'm sorry if you guys misunderstood my question, but this was not about access. This was about if you got student and athlete feedback about whether turf fields.
And I'm telling you what the feedback has been. The feedback has been that we want access to the field turfs. Yeah. That has been the feedback that I have heard directly from students in my district.
So you haven't gotten anything about the specifics of turf field versus grass field?
Like I said again, students in my district have asked that they prefer to have turf fields and to have access to them, because they're having a hard time getting access to other grass areas.
Okay,
I hope that's
thank you.
clear.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Menk.
Thank you all for the discussion, and thank you to our Councilmember for a Day for highlighting the importance of that feedback directly from the impacted community of our students. Thank you for uplifting that and helping us to stay focused on that. I want to be clear that I absolutely recognize the importance of fields and of field access. I'm not just saying that because my kids might watch this one day. Especially one of them who would rather be outside and on fields all day long if she could, and she really just makes it through the rest of her life heading for that playing time, and who has had games canceled following rainstorms. And sometimes continuous rainstorms, and with an inability to ever get them rescheduled. And meanwhile, counterparts on the other side of the county, their games are able to be scheduled. So in my own family, we have seen that equity issue and that access issue playing out, and it is something that we have to address, and it has to be a priority. There are 4 really high priority fields in this budget that you all have identified who are at the top of the list in terms of addressing that access issue. And I know that many of us have heard directly and compellingly from them as well. And they are in this budget, and that's $11.9 million, if I'm correct, to ensure that those fields are able to be constructed. And I want to really appreciate the families and community members and students who have illustrated for us in great detail why those fields are such a high priority, and for their none of them have wanted to prioritize themselves above the others. They've all together said, you know, we want to be able to do all of these. They're all really important, and I appreciate that as well. That can be a tough thing to do. We have also heard, of course, from many, many, many students, families, and staff about going into the school buildings in which the air that they're breathing in there is making them sick. And that's also a really important, and everybody recognizes this. I want to be clear, I'm not telling anybody up here or in front of us something that they don't know, but I'm just restating that is completely unacceptable. And I do find that as a county, all of us collectively, that to me is something that we have to come together to address many important issues, including fields, but the ability of our staff and students to be able to go into buildings, and that they do not have a choice. They must be in these buildings for hours a day. And there are many of them who the very air that they are breathing in there is making them sick. And parents have to send their kids into these buildings knowing that it is making them sick. They are getting asthma. I've heard from families who their kids are missing school it's such a serious issue. It's a liability. It certainly should be. And that's something where we need to be looking for every penny in every possible place to move money into this space to address that. And so that is the position that I was emphasizing in committee and in the making of this motion. It's a very difficult decision, but as this 34 million is going to be looked at within, and I think Council Vice President Balcombe made this point well, it's going to be looked at in the context not just of MCPS, it's going to be looked at in the context of the entire CIP. And so for me, compellingly, you can't argue with moving dollars into making sure our students can walk into buildings and be able to safely breathe the air there. So that was why I was interested in seeing if there might be an interest in the board and the MCPS making a recommendation that would address that issue. If there's not interest in doing that, I understand, and that is what it is, but that was where that came from for me, because I know that we are going to have to make very serious cuts across the CIP to many line items that all of us find important. And to me, again, the HVAC issue across our school system really has to be top priority. Thank you.
I'm going to call the question. We have a a motion by Councilmember Fritzen to support the school board recommendation on the outdoor play space and athletic infrastructure. It was second already. I don't think we need to discuss anymore. It's a yes or no at this point. All those in favor of the motion, and again, it's gonna compete with everything else that we have been talking about on the CIP, and in May, we're gonna take the decision. Today is just a motion to have this considered among the many items that we have. That's it. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Against? 1, 2, 3, 4. The motion passes. Oh. No, you say yes, right? Yeah, no, I got him. Madam Clerk, did you get that? No? You did no? You said no? Okay, let's do it again. Okay, all right, pay attention.
Just do the nose.
And I'm going to clarify the motion for you, okay? Because, again, the motion that was given by Councilmember Fritzen is to support the school board recommendation on the outdoor play space and athletic infrastructure, right? Which was reduced by the county executive. The motion is to support the school board. It was second by Lutke. Clear? Okay. It's going to compete with everything else. We're not saying it's a given. It's going to compete with all the other CIP items, which we're going to be voting on in May. Was that clear?
So it's
okay.
Specific to it could not be from there for discussion.
Point of clarification.
No,
it's to add 34 million back to the ball fields. That's the motion.
Yes.
I mean, just so we say the amount so people watching understand.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not currently in there. Yeah.
Yes, is what the board requested that the executive reduced. Okay? Yep. Okay, it's clear. Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All those against, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The motion passes. Do not celebrate. The motion passes. Do not take another one. We are going to move on, guys. We have to move on.
It's clear.
Can please, council staff, continue with the packet?
One item that we've heard from multiple council members, and this had to do with the non-recommended reductions, scenario A, but it's in the board request was a new project for transportation and regional support facilities. This has to do with locating and right-sizing the inventory of space for the school's bus fleet. The non-recommended reduction would push the work out on the new regional depot sites by 3 years. So this is something that the committee supported for affordability reasons, but we did get some questions from council members back and forth about what the proposal originally was, what sites were being considered for the regional sites and so forth. So I thought it would be helpful just to have that while we have MCPS here today to clarify the project and what the 3-year delay means with regard to that.
Thank you. Can MCPS please address that?
Thank you. So as council members are aware, there certainly has been over almost 20-year discussion regarding MCPS transportation capacity and depot and location needs. The largest impetus for that discussion is the county's recommendation and subsequent actions to direct MCPS to vacate the property on Shady Grove Depot. So there are multiple parts to this conversation. One is that we are working with the Department of General Services around a solution to the heavy maintenance and other major components of that site. We're very appreciative of that effort. At the same time, our fleet has continued to grow, and it's grown not only at the Shady Grove Depot, but literally at every depot. And the majority of our depots are operating well over their programmed capacity. And so we do need available bus parking at multiple sites. We need them at the sites that we have recommended, and we will likely need them at additional sites beyond that. And again, we are working with DGS to identify any additional sites as well. So the board's request puts forward a proposal to site on board-owned property. So that gives us the fiscal efficiency of sites that the board owns. And they're strategically located. As council members know, we are organizing into operational regions, which will allow us to house the buses closer to the areas that they serve, reducing operational dead time, reducing fuel costs, increasing our efficiency in our services to schools. And it's not only going to be for transportation, it will also co-locate, as our existing depots do as well, some of our facility maintenance operations staff. And again, bringing those service areas deeper into the school areas and improving not only our service, but our operational efficiency. And ultimately, it will improve our costs as well. That's our proposal. Again, there are multiple aspects to this. The one that has had the most discussion is the county's requirement that we leave that property, which we've been working on for an extraordinarily long time. But we can't lose sight of the fact that that is not our only infrastructure issue when it comes to school bus transportation.
Thank you for that. We're going to start with Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you. There's a lot of concern about this because the community learned about this, the two communities that have the sites that were listed in a board packet. They learned about it while searching board materials for unrelated other issues, which is a problem that I think we need to talk about. But has there been any public communication on this? Has there been public engagement, community outreach?
We did a whole CIP process this fall in October, and this was one of the many projects listed as part of that process, and we had engagement as part of that process.
What was the engagement as part of that process?
We had a number of CIP town hall events and engagement events, as well as public hearings and public meetings.
Those sites were included in the superintendent's presentation and said out loud in the separate superintendent's presentation in the fall, as well as our subsequent work sessions with the board, and was also referenced and raised in the education committee meeting. I will say that, again, as an initial proposal that has not been approved or funded on a schedule, certainly that would be our normal process of that communication.
I mean, the challenge here is you mentioned this has been a really long process. And as we discussed this extensively at the council, there have been public meetings here at the council chambers with municipal officials. There have been just a host of conversations over the course of at least a decade on this issue. And these two sites were not specifically discussed as far as I can remember.
Every board-owned site, frankly, has been part of the discussion throughout. And some sites, depending on what portions of the depot were looking to be moved, these sites actually have been raised in previous discussions. Now, again, previous goes for a long period of time, and I appreciate that. But they are listed as board publicly owned sites that are vacant, and they have been discussed throughout the years-long process, looking at portions of relocation. Again, these are sites that would be not suitable for the large relocation that we're working with DGS on to go to Goody Drive. But they are sites for bus parking, and they have been discussed in that context.
And to your point, council member, and I think that this is particularly important, there's been decades of posturing on this issue, in particular with the Shady Grove Depot, and it's not real until it's real. And when you see it in the CIP as an actual project, then it becomes real, and change sounds great until it shows up at your doorstep. Until it becomes real, people don't have the level of awareness, even though they're discussed in public forums for years. That is a part of this process, and maybe that speaks to some of the issues with the process, but it's not from a lack of us trying to elevate this as an issue. At the end of the day, we have to park the buses somewhere. We have to utilize the infrastructure in an effective and an efficient way. And there is an opportunity here, not all downside, by the way. There is an opportunity here for us to save some operating expense and for us to operate a lot more efficiently than how we have in the past and to utilize our capacity a little bit better. And so it is tough. And I think it's important that we take into consideration the concerns that our constituents are communicating to both you, to us, and to everybody, but that we also take into consideration the realities of what we actually need to do to operate the system and balance those two.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, I do think there's a difference of public outreach when you actually either say we're going to have a process at looking at where we need to park buses, because this is a serious public issue that we have to face as a school system. And then here's the process with which we're going to determine which of the dozens and dozens of sites that we have available and what makes sense. And, you know, then explain it to the public. It's another to say we made decisions of 2 sites. It's based on some factors. That's the decision. You know, ultimately what you're asking the council to do before the public outreach actually happens and those types of explanations occur, you're asking us to essentially approve the project. Now, the committee has delayed the funding for the project, but in delaying the funding, we're approving a project that wasn't in the CIP that is going to be in the CIP. And at least from my perspective, I'm not comfortable doing that because I don't think that the adequate level of public outreach on this has occurred. So I appreciate your interest in trying to resolve a longstanding issue. I do think that the level of public outreach that would be expected of this, that is similar to the level of public outreach that was done on the bus depot sites that were under consideration and the moving parts that have happened, there have been extensive public outreach on those. There's been virtually none on this. So I would move that we remove this from the capital budget, from the CIP, not just to delay it the 3 years. I think you can come back in 2 years. The reality is CIPs are really 2-year documents. The rest of it is just a planning document. And so you would have ample time to do that public outreach and come back subsequently to include it into the next CIP and have funding available to move forward with it. But ultimately, I'm not comfortable approving something that I don't think the adequate level of public outreach has occurred.
You made a motion. There's a motion on the table, second by Councilmember Sidney Katz. We're not going to vote yet. I have quite a few people wanting to speak. I'm going to start with Council Vice President Balcom.
Thank you. So there's a letter coming to you. It may have crossed paths during this conversation. So I agree with Councilmember Friedson on the community outreach on this. And you made the comment about, I mean, people don't like change and they don't pay attention until it shows up on their doorstep. This is literally going to show up on people's doorsteps. We have both communities, they're residential communities, and which is why the school sites were there, because we have residential schools. But I found out about it on social media when people started tagging me about how irresponsible I was for not bringing this to my community's attention when I was never notified of this. And there's such a difference between having it on a slide in a CIP hearing, slideshow, than reaching out to the actual neighborhoods that are being affected. And I know that opens up a whole can of worms, but these are people who've, this is their neighborhood, and they should be part of the discussion. And then, so that's one issue. So I agree wholeheartedly with my colleague. The other issue is Department of Transportation and what has been their involvement, because both of the sites, one is in my district, one abuts my district, and I go through 118 and Clapper Road 10 times a week, and I just don't see it. So if you can just answer the question about the DOT's engagement.
So again, as the projects are approved and get closer to fruition, this is the kind of work that we do to build out the scope of the project. I will say that we have bus depots, again, in a wide variety of areas. Our buses travel literally every road in Montgomery County through every kind of condition and every kind of traffic condition. So we are everywhere already, and we will be doing those traffic studies. Should the project be approved, we would move into that phase of work.
Thank you. Appreciate that. But there's a difference from 3 buses going down a road twice a day versus however many buses going in and out twice a day, right? So I think that's, I understand that there are buses everywhere and buses on every single road, but that's different than a number of buses. I'm not even saying that whether I approve or disapprove of these sites, because I don't know anything about the process. I don't know how many buses. I don't know what the Department of Transportation says. I don't know what the timing of the lights are going to be during rush hour. So all of that. But I just think that if you're ready to name 2 sites, then you should be ready to engage the neighborhoods of those 2 sites before it becomes where it is now. I'm sure everyone's receiving the same emails I'm receiving, hundreds. So anyway, that's my thought. I agree with Council Member Friedson.
So, Madam Vice President, we certainly appreciate that, and for whatever it's worth, we think that level of community engagement is absolutely essential. It is a little difficult to do this, and there is some sort of chicken and egg scenario here in shopping a project that doesn't exist. And so this is kind of part of that process, is to have a project that is scoped, to then talk about with the community, to do the conversations with DOT about traffic studies and whatnot, because it's almost like until it is a project, it's not a project. And there is the downwind consequence that if not this, then what? And I think we're all open to creative problem solving, but one of the issues, and I think what has stalled our departure from Shady Grove, is there hasn't been a viable solution that people are willing to endorse. And as a consequence of that, no one has been willing to put it on a CIP. And as a consequence of that, it has forestalled, now pushing decades, our departure from Shady Grove for other opportunities that the county can capture. And so I think that this makes total sense. I would implore the county to work with us and to try to find a solution so that we can stay on schedule with a departure from Shady Grove to use that, because the alternative is we don't have an alternative. And so we do actually have the operational issue of actually needing a place for the buses to go. And so we're right there with you. We could not agree more in terms of that, what is needed as far as next steps, but we do have to get the ball rolling in some sort of an official way for us to get this project moving in one way or another. Utilizing board-owned property, that's a great alternative, but the council may have other ideas as well. We're open to those. Our community may have other ideas. We're open to those as well.
Council Member Sidney Katz.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and thank you all for agreeing that we have a problem. I guess I've been involved with this on the Krabs Branch Parkway, and Councilmember Lukey actually inherited that. That was in my district, and she was fortunate enough to have part of that as her district. So, but we need to solve the problem, but I don't know that we're solving the problem this way. We've had, and we've all had, constituents contact us and say that they found out about it in a slide deck in October 2025 meeting, and it wasn't really brought up. It was just in the deck. And so that's misinformation causes information, in some cases causes misinformation, and that's what has caused a lot of this excitement. I believe that most of the board-owned property would have been donated to the board during development process, 10 acres, whatever, for an elementary school, never built. And those are in extremely residential areas. I mean, that's the reason you had an elementary school site there, was it's extremely residential. And then someone is saying, well, it'll be a few buses. Well, 100 buses, to your point, is a whole lot different on those roads than the 3 buses that are coming to pick up our children to go to school. So that becomes an issue. And of course, the noise becomes an issue. All of those things, what time they start. You know, what always concerns me is when somebody says, we've been talking about this for 20 years, and we have. But then, many times when we have these discussions, somebody say, well, you know what? This isn't going to happen for 10 years. Don't worry about it now. Well, all of a sudden, people don't worry about it, and then they really do need to worry about it. And it's too late. We've been talking about this for 10 years, 20 years. I think the best way to go about this is the way that we're suggesting, and you're in agreement with. We need to make certain that people understand what you're thinking about, and I think we need to make certain that you're not just looking at the properties in residential areas, because I think that's a huge issue. I think we need to figure out if there could be an industrial property someplace, or more industrial, someplace that we can actually work on this. Thank you very much.
Can I have clarification on the motion so we can have everybody on board? The motion is to remove it from the CIP, but then how can we have the conversation? I need, at least I need clarity. If there has been a case in another project when you can have the conversation with the community on where something like this can be located, but can you do so without putting it on a CIP as an item? I guess I'm asking staff if there is precedent, or how can we clarify this?
Well, I mean, MCPS does have a facility planning process. They do feasibility studies in that. I think their concern is once you have a project and you have a timeline, that gives it a sense of urgency and completion that you don't have if you are just doing an initial feasibility study, but I'll let MCPS.
But I think the NCPS can still do that work, and once they're ready, then we can come back and put it on the CIP. You're saying no. Okay, I'm going to move on. I just needed that clarity for myself. I do think it's possible, but Councilmember Evan Glass.
Thank you, Madam President. Picking up on this theme, I think it was noted, I think, Mr. Superintendent, you said that there's a need for even more bus transportation. Can you expand upon this? Because I think this might be a central aspect to explore.
We have a dire urgency to reevaluate our safe routes to school. Currently, right now, we have 20% approximately of our students that access school by walking. And you know what? That's great, and we'd love to have that footprint expanded, but candidly, it has to be safe. And even though we are declining in enrollment, access to schools vis-a-vis transportation is still an issue for a lot of our kids and families, whether they elect transportation or not. Access to extracurricular programs is definitely a part of our future. When children have access to the transportation, they utilize the programs. When they don't, they don't. There is a correlation. And so those are things that we're considering. There may be a point after the effects of our most recent boundary study have settled that we may actually decline our usage in bus transportation and may even seek alternative and more efficient uses of transportation in the future. But for the foreseeable next 3 or 4 years, we are looking at a growing need that needs to be met. And even if we're trying to satisfy our current capacity right now, our depots are already over their capacity. And something to keep in mind, I think a lot of people sometimes don't always put into context, is that when a driver comes to the depot, they also have to park their vehicle and then collect their vehicle and then go. And there's a lot of models that a lot of other localities do, and some with mixed success. A good comparison is Fairfax County in Virginia, where they do have some depots, and then they try to park buses at some schools. Ask them how they like that. It doesn't work because, again, the school parking lots need to have enough spaces for the drivers to park their vehicles. There needs to be a secure location. And if we're as committed as I hope we are to a more fuel-efficient vehicle in the future for student transportation, we would have to build out that infrastructure in certain places and be really intentional about that is what that looks like and where that is, because it does have a significant carrying cost. So to the extent that we can think through a really concrete and finite plan that capitalizes on our resources a little bit better, one of the advantages of having depots in multiple locations is you save on the deadhead miles of crossing the county to park your bus at one location. Like you may be at the Shady Grove Depot, but you may be servicing an area in Silver Spring. That's a lot of miles that you're driving to get to your location to service, and then a lot of miles that you're coming back, or you may be accessing a countywide program where you may have students that are quite literally all over the county. And so reducing some of both the fuel consumption, but also the efficiency gap that gets created in that environment really is in our best interest. And I think our bus depots would be a lot less offensive to some of our communities if they were smaller. And so there's an opportunity for that too.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that is important context for this conversation, and noting that nearly 20% of our children do walk to school. That's great. We have to make our roads safer for our students and for everybody. My heart skips a beat every time I wake up and see a text that a child was hit, God forbid, killed. It's why when I passed the Safe Streets Act, one of the 4 components of that is a school review of the infrastructure, and I appreciate you all working with MCDOT to have undertaken dozens of those reviews to try and get ahead of the problem. One of the things I didn't hear, though, is our already existing public transportation network. And back in 2019, when I led the effort to make buses free for kids all the time, and now that we've expanded that to Ride On and Metrobus, it was my hope that those systems would be better integrated into MCPS and loosen the need for MCPS yellow buses. What has that integration or relationship been at all? And I'll fast forward to even this year when there were boundary reviews that were being undertaken. Parents were contacting me saying, you know, the yellow bus might send our kid to a different school that is further away, but what if we had a ride-on line that could accommodate? So clearly, big supporter of public transit, buses that are already operating in different depots, but also recognizing that it's an off-ramp for some of the yellow buses.
And so this is absolutely an opportunity and analysis that has been in continuously looked at for a number of years. I think, and we have had some success in some corridors where there is strong ride-on and public transit, particularly along University with Northwood and Blair. And some of those areas where, again, you have areas where the ride-on exists. Ride-on doesn't necessarily go to all of the spaces where we have even our larger high schools. And part of what we find too is that the morning might work well, but that 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So again, it's sometimes also about aligning the routes, and that's just a conversation that we have to have ongoing with Ride On to be sure that that our operational needs and their operational needs are lining up.
Thank you for that, and I'll just end by saying this. While there is, I think the voting record is clear, unanimous support among this council to close the bus depot in Durwood, there's clearly differences of opinion on how to move forward. Instead of having a one-to-one solution, I think expanding the scope of the problem solving to incorporate Ride-On, to incorporate Metrobus, and ultimately to make our roads safer for everybody are other aspects that we need to look into to solve this problem. Thank you.
Councilmember Don Duque.
Thank you, Madam President. And first off, I want to say a thank you because you haven't heard that today thus far. But I do want to thank DGS and MCPS for the ongoing work related to the Shady Grove Bus Depot. And I also want to be clear, it is not eliminating the buses there. Right. So I do want to make that clear. And it's through that collaborative problem solving and the alignment of some other opportunities that came up that made it possible for us to say, okay, well, we can take X number over to this other industrial site off Goody Drive, which is just down the road, and make this happen and reduce the footprint. But it doesn't eliminate the buses. And Shady Grove, my constituents will still have buses there, and there will still be a bus depot there. They also have the ride-on bus depot there, right? Also, and I appreciate Councilmember Glass's comments related to ride-on, but I want to be clear that 90% of my district doesn't get anything from ride-on, so free buses don't help my people at all. It really doesn't. And I'm sure you've heard the complaints about the one ride-on at the Damascus, the Woodfield Road route, and then also the stop at Magruder that stops at times that don't make any sense for teachers or students or anyone. So we have a lot of logistical challenges as county government, as a school system to unpack and work through. And when I hear you speaking to my colleagues, to answering their questions, what I'm thinking of too, and also having spoken to parents and being one of those parents, is that there are a lot of questions about, especially with boundary studies and the new boundaries and the regional programming model. Again, there's going to need to be flexibility and adaptability as to how the transportation is delivered, and it's not necessarily going to look like it does right now. And I don't know what that's going to look like, and I know I'm going to have to keep pace and keep looking and see what the route is and how it'll work for my kids or not work for my kids, and what we need to do to be adaptive based on what their needs are. But we do know that we agree that having those transportation pieces, to your point, Dr. Taylor, are critically important to student engagement, student involvement, extracurricular participation, and all the things we want our students to feel both academically and extracurricularly successful. And so in order to do that, there has to be flexibility built in to the system to continue this work, to make sure you're able to make those adaptations as needed. So I just wanted to put that out there. I hear what you're saying. I do understand, having dealt with a community that felt very upset for a very, very, very long time. And also, nobody's getting everything they want in that scenario. But working through it and to my colleagues' points about communication and making sure we're on top of it too. It does truly help when we are kept abreast of, even if it's just we're milling this over, because nothing spreads faster than a rumor about MCPS in Montgomery County, Maryland. And so if we don't know those things and then we start getting bombarded, it becomes incredibly overwhelming for us, because then they are like, well, who are you? How come you didn't know this thing? And I'm like, I didn't know, and my kid even goes to school there. So the more you can be cognizant of sharing that with us, the better off it'll be for us in responding to those issues.
Thank you very much. I think I just want to reiterate the motion is basically to delay the CIP item until to cut it, but you.
So just to clarify, Madam President, I think we should take it out of the CIP. It was delayed 3 years, which means that we're approving it. My view is I'm not comfortable approving it because I don't think the adequate level of public outreach has occurred. I think we should take it out. The timeline would be the same here. The MCPS was requesting this, just to clarify. MCPS was requesting this, and the money would be deployed almost immediately. So if we're delaying it 3 years and we're saying, I'm not sure what's happening in those 3 years, but public outreach could occur. What I'm saying is I think it's premature for us to approve it. It's essentially a distinction without a difference, in the sense that the same timeline in terms of the turnaround time would be in effect here, that if MCPS needed to move forward to keep their timeline, they could keep those 3 years. It would be the same thing as what they came in this CIP with.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to ask, because I'm going to ask MCPS to respond, and then I'm going to turn it to Councilmember Lorian Sells, who has been patiently waiting. There you go.
So we would respectfully disagree that it's the same issue in that an approved project, even on a delayed schedule, is still an approved project. It's a project that then we can plan for the scope, we know, and again, do the work that we've all been talking about. Also, that reserves fiscal capacity in the CIP, whereas there would not be fiscal capacity in the CIP if it were removed completely. I do also feel that that's an important signal that we are moving forward on this project because, again, as the person who has been working on this from the beginning, we have looked at industrial sites. There's a dearth of those. We have been through a number of these processes. And each time, the proposed solution, whatever it has been or whatever pieces of it have been pulled out. And it does leave us where we are today, which is with not any project on the horizon for us to move forward.
Thank you for that clarification. And I'm going to turn it to Councilmember Lorian Sells.
All right, thank you. I, too, have been following this for a long time, and, you know, I even went so far as to go into Google Maps and see where this new proposed site was, because I thought it was still going to be along Shady Grove Road. And I see the forested area. I'm not familiar with the area, but I see a residential neighborhood very close by, 2 daycare centers, a playground right at the corner. And as colleagues have mentioned, we don't know what the traffic is. And I know that there's been a lot of residential development near the current bus depot. What I'm not aware of are the full spectrum of available sites where the bus depot can be moved to, and how many different sites right now is it currently taking over across the county?
So we have 6 depots and 5 sites. We have what effectually Shady Grove Bus Depot operates as, it's large enough that we have 2, but it's 1 site, and then we have 4 other locations around the county. In terms of other sites, again, we've done various iteration of site review, site selection, site identification. Always we have started with board-owned sites because that's certainly the most fiscally, that's the least expensive way to go about this. We also, though, have looked anytime a light industrial or industrial parcel comes available, we have looked at it each and every time. And, you know, some of them are feasible, some of them are not, some of them are more expensive than others, and not everyone is suitable for this purpose. There's also increasingly less of that type of use in Montgomery County. And so the nature of those sites are being constrained, and their availability is significantly less from even when I started working on this project, which was an embarrassingly long time ago. We've looked at closed landfills. We've looked at all the county-owned properties. We've looked at, we truly have looked at them. And there have been a number of occasions where the school system has brought forward a property that's a school-owned property. And again, concerns similar as are being raised here today are then have resulted in those properties not being considered. And I think that the concern is just that in the absence of that, there aren't other properties that we are able to take advantage of, which again leaves us in this limbo situation.
And then how many of our current school buses in operation are electric versus diesel?
Roughly 285 buses are electric.
Out
of a little over 1,600 buses.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'll yield.
Thank you. Councilmember Will Juando.
Thank you. I appreciate the discussion. I just wanted to reiterate, just for clarity, what the committee did. There was a request to move this forward for the reasons that have been stated, for affordability primarily, but also recognizing from, I'll state my position as the chair of the Education Committee, and having worked with Essie, not as long as she's worked on it, but I think about the gift that left your, the office related to this issue, but that it is important to signal that we're moving forward with something, and that this saves, if I'm reading this right, Mr. Levchenko, $30 million in the CIP by removing this?
That's how much the request was for, and even with the delay, it's all still in the 6 years.
Right, and it was just pushed it out, starting it in 30. Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, that was the recommendation. I do think the placeholder is important because it will cost some money, and so I agree with the point you just made that you have to go through it, and we don't want to lose that because it's just is something. I also agree with colleagues that there needs to be continued robust community engagement on it, and I think I've heard that commitment from you today. So I think this strikes both balances in that it helps us with affordability in the early years of the CIP, but also keeps the project ongoing and will help force and be alongside those important conversations. So thank you, Madam President.
I wholeheartedly agree with the chair of the Education and Culture Committee. And that also means that you need to hustle and do true community engagement on this. But that's my view. I have two other people wanting to speak. Let's have them speak and then vote on that motion that is in place, okay? Councilmember Shara Evans.
Sure. So while I've been in the queue, a lot of the questions that I wanted to have asked, just to kind of highlight for the community, have been asked, and I agree with Chair Jawando that we should keep this in the queue, and hopefully we can plan and engage simultaneously. I know that might be a little bit hard, but don't get sick of me having served on the board of education. As Ms. McGuire has stated, this has been taken off numerous times, and I don't know that we're able to really find an industrial space. The Randolph Depot, that's in a residential area, right? So I think we just when you're doing that engagement, and not trying to tell you what to do, but I think a good thing to share with the community is the challenges that we face in terms of where a depot could go in Montgomery County and what that looks like. But I had kids attend Kennedy High School, it was right across the street. And while it does seem like it's a bit much, it hasn't been actually. So I look forward to you all being able to have additional conversation with the community so they can to help them understand. I don't want to take this out of the queue and then we end up in a situation as the school system has done with HVAC, right? Because I know that there's always good intentions, but sometimes when there's a tight crunch or recommendations, we do things that that are not in necessarily what we're in agreement with doing. So I think this could be something that could end up being bad down the road.
So just very briefly, Councilmember Evans, I want to thank you because you've articulated something that I don't think has gotten a lot of attention, which is that there's upside. And one of the benefits that the Kennedy cluster receives from having a depot so close by is a more efficient busing system and tighter timelines for on-time delivery. And so those are some things that get counterbalanced in the conversation, and without the community engagement that I think Councilmember Friedson and other people are looking for, that there isn't really even that opportunity to tell that story, and that there are some challenges with every decision. There are pros and cons. And there are just as many pros as there are detractors. And so thank you for the opportunity to tell that side of it.
And I'll just say real quickly, I had a listening session last night in Wheaton, Glenmont, and President Fanny Gonzalez was there. But the whole point of me mentioning that is that Ms. Wendy, who was our bus driver for elementary school, was a bus driver with MCPS for like 20 years. And so you could time her. She was going to be on time, never late. You could always depend and rely on her, and that I could say that for the buses that would take our kids to Parkland and then our other daughter to Argyle. They were always where they needed to be, and there was never a question or any doubt. So yes.
Thank you for that, Councilmember Evans. Next, Councilmember Andrew Friedson.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify. Ms. McGuire knows how I feel about her, I hope, and I hope it's mutual from our many years working together. I just want to clarify. I don't dispute that there is a difference between my motion and the committee's recommendation, which is what was being suggested earlier, which I agree with. That's the reason why I'm making the motion, respectfully. My point was not about the committee's motion and that it's a distinction, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a difference. My point was this question of it's in the queue and taking it out of the queue. There is nothing in the queue right now. The Board of Education is requesting this to be abruptly put into the queue. And the committee is suggesting maybe not abruptly in the queue, but it has some time. Let's pass it along to a future date for affordability reasons primarily. And secondarily, that will give you some more time to do the public, robust community outreach that has been lacking up to this point. And that's essentially what we're talking about. I just want to recenter the conversation. My point is, there was no capacity in the CIP. There wasn't a need for a 3-year ramp to get it into the CIP for it to be requested this year originally. So my point is, if we don't approve it right now, prior to any community public engagement outreach in any significant or serious way, the board would have the opportunity to come back next year or the year after, because we're delaying it 3 years. And the same timeline that was being requested here would still be available to the board, is the point that I'm trying to make. That was the point that I was making earlier. That's the point that I continue to make. It is not currently in the queue. We have an approved CIP. This was not contemplated or included or discussed as part of this CIP. And the question is whether we include it. The decision before the decision before the council is not whether to take it out of the queue. The decision before the council, just to clarify roles, is whether or not we are going to agree to put it in to the queue. That is the distinction here. As we're talking about what is the council's role and what is the board's role, the council's role right now is to approve a project or to not approve a project. And my point is, I don't think we should approve the project because I don't think the appropriate level of public engagement has happened. If we're delaying it for 3 years anyway here, there's an opportunity to do that. My concern is once we approve it, your point is once we have it in the CIP, that means we know it's there and it's going to happen. The challenge is then that means there are no listening sessions. There are talking sessions because we've already essentially decided the outcome. And that's the concern. And I think it puts the board in a tougher situation and MCPS in a tougher situation from my perspective, because if you ultimately land in the place of making this decision, it seems like you had made it from the beginning and didn't take the feedback. So if you start at the point at which you say, okay, we're going to do public outreach, we're going to say we have a problem, we need to figure out what to do with our lack of access to bus depots and where to park buses and where to park the vehicles that bus drivers bring to work every day. Here are all the sites that we looked at. Here are the considerations that we have to make. Here are the pros and cons, and there are benefits to the public. I believe there are opportunities to do that, but if we start at the point where the council is agreeing to this in the beginning, then it leaves the question to the public of what exactly the public outreach is really about, except to explain how this is going to work, not how this is going to happen and what involvement they have in the decision-making process. That's the reason why I'm making the motion. That's the motion before us. It's not whether to take it out of the queue. It's whether or not this council wants to agree to put it in the queue, as is being requested for the first time by the Board of Education, and what the timeline is to include it in the queue, which the committee is suggesting would be a 3-year delay from the board's request, but would be the first time that it would be included and the first time that the council will have approved it at the county council. I'll yield back.
Thank you. Councilmember Lorian Sales.
Yes, I just wanted to be clear that the vote that we're taking today is to leave this in the budget, the CIP, for further consideration and to have additional conversations, or what are we?
I mean, my
I know you want
motion is to remove it
completely. Yes. Yes.
Well, the committee recommendation was a 3-year delay of the new project.
Okay.
So delay is a little bit, I get the syntax is a little confusing. It doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
So it's not really a delay, but we have to compare it to something. So it's comparing to the board's request. It would start 3 years later than proposed.
Okay, so that would give them some more time to have discussions.
Well, that's what the committee recommended.
Okay.
But what's before you now with this motion is not just to delay it for 3 years, but to not have it in the CIP.
Okay.
To not approve it as a new project.
Okay.
And come back in 2 years or whenever they're ready.
Thank you.
Right.
Yes.
Presumably under either option, there could be community engagement, but under the motion, a new project would have to come back to come back to get into the CIP.
And Dr. Taylor, can you share a bit more about why we are Is it because we need more buses, more capacity, or are we running out of space, or is the lease up at the current Shady Grove site?
So we've got a couple of issues, and it is a little bit of all of the above.
Okay.
We have exceeded our capacity as it stands right now.
Okay.
And we recognize that there's a lack of desirability to have 100 buses parked in your front yard, let alone to even park them at even our headquarters building at 850 Hungerford. There's even a lack of desirability for that. And candidly, it would be a security challenge for us too. But there is the capacity issue that we're dealing with right now. There's also looking ahead to the long-term sustainable solution of what this could look like if we are going to go into the EV bus space full on. We would need to put the infrastructure in a finite location, because that would be the historic place that we would put it. And then the last issue is the Shady Grove Depot and how much of that we would use for school bus operations versus how much the county would use for other purposes. And we are sitting on a request to scale back our usage of that space.
Okay, thank you.
The last person speaking on this item, hopefully, Councilmember Kristen Mink.
Thank you. So as I understood it and continue to understand it, it has been going on for many, many years. The situation is becoming increasingly dire in a number of ways. One, we need MCPS needs the capacity, increasingly so. And I will say that this is an issue that I have seen amongst my constituents who are, as an equity issue, looking for more busing opportunities to be able to take advantage of programming, as mentioned by the board president. And so for MCPS to be able to have more flexibility would be helpful for addressing those situations. Significant work has been done over those many years to identify a site worth proposing. And in my view, the non-recommended reduction scenario A, which MCPS brought to the committee as a non-recommended reduction scenario, but again, was not the committee's idea. This was MCPS's non-recommended, but this was MCPS put together that package, which the committee supports. In my view, that is responsive in a reasonable way to the concerns that are being raised, because it moves the substantial funding out of the years immediately before us to free us up a little bit, which we all appreciate. But it also maintains that placeholder, which I feel is fiscally responsible to not have that in there, a significant expense when we know that we are going to need it. We are approving a 6-year CIP. I don't think it makes sense to not have that indicated. Bless you. To not have that indicated there. And then also by having that there that is what, as we see with DOT's process and so on, that is a trigger for the type of deep community outreach and engagement that we would like to see here. So without having a project on the books, there's lots and lots of internal work that MCPS has done and will do, and that doesn't preclude them from the conversations that they've had and so on. But it is having a potential project on the books, and this one being now a few years out gives you more space to do this. Having a project on the books to talk about and to request data, relevant traffic data, all this stuff to bring to those community conversations. If we remove that from the books, then we significantly hamper the ability to do that kind of meaningful and deep outreach and to have those talking points to discuss and look over with the community. So in my view, scenario A that we passed out of committee is responsive to the concerns, is the most fiscally responsible, and allows for the kind of a deep community engagement that we want to see. So that's where I would. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We have a motion on the table. Second, those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those against. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The motion fails. So we stick with the committee recommendation. Council staff, can you please move forward?
Yeah, I don't think there are any other specific issues.
Are you sure?
Unless
I didn't see this one coming for this long. Okay.
I mean, we tried to be comprehensive in the packet. We've not obviously covered everything in the packet, but we certainly covered the key issues that staff had heard needed discussion today.
Councilmember Andrew Fritzen.
Yes, thank you. Sorry for monopolizing so much time this afternoon, but these are important topics. I just want to hone in on the school safety issue here. Obviously, there have been some recent events that have really brought this into the limelight. Unfortunately, over the weekend, the superintendent and I have spent some time talking quite a bit. I just want to appreciate the work of the school system that really stepped up, the board, the school system, the local school community. Bradley Hills had a very alarming situation that is unfortunately ongoing. It hasn't been resolved yet, but the way that the police department, the MCPS leadership, everybody has been working throughout the night. I just want to express my appreciation for that. There's nothing that is more important than keeping our kids safe. I just wanted to understand the overage. There's some carryover dollars in school security. Just wanted to understand what that money was budgeted for, what the use of it is expected to be, and just get a better sense of that, because it wasn't totally clear in terms of what was shared.
So I'll speak just briefly, and then Mr. Connolly can give the details. There are a number of projects that were keyed up and in an RFP process, and so they are identified, and that is part of the overage. And then there are some additional funds that certainly we can apply, but the majority of it is identified for projects.
So it's $6.5 million. Some of it's encumbered.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Please.
Yeah, I think there was a pretty large number that was stated that we had in overage, but that number was at a point in time. We have encumbered funds. We had earmarked projects, BDAs, door alarms, digital mapping, security cameras, you name it. So we did have those monies encumbered and queued up for projects. So the balance is not as high as it was announced.
So let's talk about what some of those projects are, because I think that that's probably some of the more interesting components. And this is a project that we've been working on in particular for a while, and getting some of the finite expectations and regulations, because this is tied to a state requirement as well, is to have digital mapping of all of our school sites. This really does help law enforcement in the event of an emergency where they actually have to come into a building, and it's an opportunity for them to see inside the building before they have to go inside the building. And it's a big project, and it was delayed to make sure that we were meeting all of the requirements. That's a big part of it, making sure that we were making the right investment with door alarms and some of our security cameras to make sure that we had the latest technology, I think is really helpful. But there's also some other stuff that's on the horizon that we're attentive to. Really important to know, because this is a centerpiece conversation that I know we're going to come back and talk to council about in short order, and I think it's next week even, is just briefly to mention that we just need to have a portfolio approach, and it's not any one thing. There isn't one strategy that we can lean into and say, this is what we're doing, we're going to invest everything into this one piece. It's really having lots of components put together that give us a more total view of what safety looks like. And I'm optimistic to find a conclusion to our Bradley Hills situation, mainly because we have some of those security countermeasures that were pointed in the right direction to help police in their investigation and to help us resolve that matter as well as other issues. And those play a big role. And just like everything, nothing comes for free. Those things do need to be maintained. They do need to be invested in. And so the security dollars that you saw in the Board of Education's proposal do, I think, reflect putting our best foot forward to keep us moving in that right direction and enhancing safety equipment across the district. So really appreciate you elevating that, because It is the most important thing that we can talk about. I would love to tell you that instruction is our number one priority. Our number one priority is to get the kids to school and to send them home in one piece. That's our number one priority, to keep kids safe. And to keep
Can't
our
learn
staff
unless they're
safe.
safe.
That's exactly right.
Appreciate that. Well, thank you for that. If you could share with us the timeline of the spend down of the $6.5 million, I just think that would be helpful. When you see all of the security challenges and concerns that we have in our schools, then you see that there's $6.5 million that looks like it's going unspent. That's concerning. And so I appreciate you saying that sometimes the balance sheet doesn't reflect the reality operationally on the ground. There's procurement delays and other dynamics. I totally respect and get that. But if you can share that with us, I just think that would be helpful. And just before closing, because I think this might be my last opportunity to say it, first of all, I appreciate all of the work that you are trying to do to solve a lot of challenges. And there are a lot of issues and challenges that you're working through. I just hope, and I know that there is a shared commitment, but I hope, and I want to reiterate, that we be careful of trying to solve too many challenges in the same processes all at once, and we have a level setting at the outset of our processes, whether they're boundaries or whether they're school consolidation questions or whether they're bus depot questions. I think all of these issues relate, where I do think we owe it to the public to explain exactly what our processes are, explaining exactly how we came up with the decisions that we made, and making sure that we're consistent from the beginning of the end, and that we don't, in the middle of solving one set of challenges, come up with solutions to other challenges that might create other problems, because I do think it can undermine the trust in the underlying process itself. I don't think that has ever been the intention, but I do think there have been examples with Silver Spring International, with Wooten and Crown, with Magruder and others. And I just, on a macro level, wanted to raise that. I'm not here to relitigate any of those issues or to try to do the work of the board or of the superintendent and MCPS. I genuinely believe you are trying to solve a lot of challenges. But I just hope that here's the problem, here's the issue that we're trying to solve, here's the process that we're setting out to solve it, and then having an appropriate level of public outreach in order to do it. I would ask for that as I have before. I appreciate your commitment to that, and I just wanted to uplift that as part of this conversation. It is directly CIP related, but not exclusively CIP related, and I just thought it was appropriate to raise it here.
Thank you for that. I'm just going to share that next week we're going to have an exciting conversation. I spoke to MCPS, Dr. Taylor, and our president, the school board president, Grace Rivera Oven, as well as our director of HHS, Dr. Bridgers, and our chief of police, Yamada, and I said, let's have a conversation on public safety, because at the end of the day, there's no such thing as public safety. It's a school issue or just a police issue or an HHS issue. It's everybody's issue, and we're going to be talking about it right here next Tuesday. Stay tuned, and I look forward to the exciting conversation that has never happened in front of full council, but it's going to happen. And it will not be related to the budget. So just a reminder, don't come with any ideas asking for money. That's not the intention. The intention is to connect the dots, because a lot of people, they miss that HHS is doing an amazing job working with the school system, and a lot of people have no clue. So let's uplift the amazing work that we're doing and see the challenges too. With that, oh my goodness, Councilmember Wojawando.
You're going to like this. This is just
okay.
me
Let's see if I like it.
That I'd like to move the amended CIP MCPS right now.
Second, all those in favor, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. Now we're adjourned. Good looking out.
Thank you very much.